It is 3 in the morning. The house is quiet, wrapped in a deep and settled stillness. The world outside is asleep, resting under a blanket of darkness. But you are awake. Your body is tired, craving the release of sleep. But your mind has other plans. It is a loud and frantic place, a storm of thoughts that refuses to be calm. Lists of tasks for tomorrow circle endlessly, colliding with conversations from yesterday, replayed and re-argued. Worries about finances, about health, about relationships rise up like ghosts in the dark, each one demanding your full attention. You stare at the ceiling, feeling the immense weight of it all, a silent pressure that seems to fill the room. This experience, this lonely vigil in the dead of night, is not just a simple case of insomnia. It is a profound symptom of the world we live in, a world that never truly switches off. We are taught from a young age to strive, to achieve, to do more, to be more. Our value is often measured by our productivity, our schedules, our accomplishments. We have become masters of doing, but we have forgotten how to simply be. Our minds, like loyal employees, have learned this lesson all too well. They refuse to clock out, constantly processing, planning, and problem solving, even when the only problem is their own relentless noise. But what if the solution isn't to try harder, to force the mind into submission, or to find a better distraction? What if the path to peace, the path to the deep and restorative sleep you long for, is not found in adding something new, but in gently letting things go? For thousands of years, an ancient wisdom has explored this very predicament. It is not a rigid religion, but a deep and compassionate science of the mind. It offers a set of practical tools, not to fight the storm within, but to find the quiet, unshakable center in the eye of the storm. This journey we are about to take is an invitation to explore these timeless stories and teachings, to learn the gentle art of releasing the burdens you were never meant to carry. It is a path to understanding your own mind, to befriending it, and to finally guiding it home to the silence and rest it so deeply deserves. To truly begin this journey toward quiet nights, we must first become intimately acquainted with the very nature of the mind that keeps us awake. We must look directly, with courage and with kindness, at the source of the inner turmoil. The ancient teachers of the Buddhist tradition had a beautifully accurate and gentle name for this phenomenon. They called it the monkey mind. The image is immediately clear, is it not? A restless monkey, unable to stay still for more than a moment, swinging frantically from one branch to the next, chattering incessantly, grabbing at one piece of fruit only to drop it and chase another. This is the inner world we so often inhabit. Our attention, like this monkey, leaps from a memory of the past to a worry about the future, to a sensation in the body, to a fragment of a song, to an imagined conversation, all within the space of a few seconds. There is no malice in this monkey. It is not trying to harm us. It is simply untrained, wild, and accustomed to constant motion, and its frantic energy becomes most apparent, most overwhelming, in the deep silence of the night. During our waking day, the world provides endless distractions, endless branches for our monkey mind to swing on. The demands of work, the chatter of colleagues, the flow of traffic, the endless scroll of news and social media, the music in a cafe, the task of preparing a meal. All of these external events capture our attention, pulling it outward. Our mental energy is occupied, directed toward tangible things. We may feel stressed or busy, but the sheer volume of external noise often masks the deeper noise within. But then, night comes. We turn off the lights. We silence our phones. We close our eyes. The world outside finally goes quiet. And in that vast, silent space, the monkey mind, deprived of its external playground, turns inward with ferocious energy. The silence of the room becomes a perfect amphitheater for its chaotic performance. Every worry is amplified, every regret echoes louder. It is like standing in a soundproof room, where for the first time, you can hear the frantic, desperate beating of your own heart and the rush of blood in your ears. The absence of external distraction does not create peace. It simply reveals the chaos that was there all along, hidden just beneath the surface. This is why you can feel utterly exhausted, yet your mind feels electric, buzzing, with an energy that has nowhere to go. It feasts on itself, digging up old grievances, rehearsing future anxieties, creating elaborate dramas from the smallest of seeds. It is a projector that, in the darkness of the room, casts its most vivid and terrifying images onto the screen of our awareness. To understand why our mind behaves this way, we must look at its intentions with compassion. This anxious, problem-solving mind is not our enemy. In many ways, it is a deeply ingrained survival mechanism, a loyal but outdated protector. For countless generations, the survival of our ancestors depended on this very quality. Their minds were constantly scanning the environment for threats, a rustle in the grass that could be a predator, a change in the weather that could ruin a crop. They survived by planning, by remembering which paths were dangerous, and by worrying about the future. A mind that could anticipate problems was a mind that kept its body alive. That ancient software is still running in our modern brains. The difference is that today, the perceived threats have changed. The saber-toothed tiger has been replaced by a critical email from our boss. The threat of starvation has been replaced by the fear of not being able to pay the mortgage. The danger of being cast out from the tribe has been replaced by the social anxiety of saying the wrong thing at a party. Our mind, in its well-meaning but primitive way, cannot tell the difference. It registers these modern anxieties with the same 5-alarm urgency as it did the life or death threats of the past. It believes that by constantly worrying, by replaying every mistake, by planning for every conceivable negative outcome, it is protecting us. It doesn't have an off switch. And so, when we lie down to sleep, a time of vulnerability, this inner protector goes into overdrive with no immediate, tangible problems to solve. In the quiet of the bedroom, it begins to create them. It says, let's review that awkward conversation from last week, just to make sure we learn from it. It says, let's think about that big presentation in 2 months and imagine everything that could go wrong, so we can be prepared. It believes it is being helpful. It believes it is doing its job. When we understand this, our relationship with our own thoughts can begin to shift. We can move from frustration and anger toward a sense of gentle understanding. We are not broken. Our mind is not our adversary. It is simply running an old program, a program of protection that, in our modern context, now creates the very suffering it is trying to prevent. Our first instinct, when faced with this inner chaos, is to fight. We try to force the thoughts to stop. We tell ourselves, don't think about that, or I need to just clear my mind. We wrestle with our anxiety. We try to suppress our fears. This approach is not only exhausting, it is profoundly counterproductive. Imagine you are in a pool, trying to hold a large beach ball underwater. You have to use immense effort and constant pressure to keep it down. The moment your attention wavers, the moment you relax your grip, the ball doesn't just surface, it explodes out of the water with tremendous force. Our thoughts and feelings are exactly like this beach ball. The more we try to suppress them, the more energy we give them, and the more powerfully they will eventually surge back into our awareness. The battle itself is what creates the turmoil. The great wisdom of the Buddhist path offers a radical alternative, one that requires not force, but a gentle courage. It suggests that the first step is not to fight the monkey, but to simply watch it. This is the practice of objective observation. It is the act of stepping back, just a little, and becoming the witness to your own mind, rather than the victim of it. Imagine you are sitting peacefully on a riverbank. The river is your mind, and the thoughts, feelings, and sensations are the leaves, twigs, and bits of debris floating by. Some are pleasant, some are ugly, some float by quickly, others get stuck in an eddy for a while. Your task is not to jump into the river and try to stop the flow or clean it up. Your task is simply to sit, to watch, and to notice what passes by. When a worry about work floats by, you don't grab it. You simply note, there is a thought about work. When a memory tinged with sadness appears, you don't push it away. You note, a feeling of sadness is here. You do this with a spirit of gentle curiosity, without judgment, without criticism. In this simple, yet profound act of watching, you are doing something revolutionary. You are creating space. You are separating yourself, your core sense of awareness, from the endless chatter of your thoughts. This leads us to one of the most liberating discoveries on this path, the subtle but life-changing difference between thinking and knowing that you are thinking. To be lost in a thought is to be completely identified with it. The thought, "I am not good enough," is experienced not as a thought, but as a fundamental truth about who you are. It carries immense weight and emotional power. You are inside the thought, looking out at the world through its distorted lens. But to know that you are thinking is to see the thought for what it is, a transient event in the mind. The awareness shifts to, "I am having the thought that I am not good enough." Can you feel the difference? In that small gap, that moment of recognition, lies all of your freedom. The thought is no longer you. It is something you are observing. It is a cloud passing through the vast sky of your awareness. It is a car driving down the street of your mind. You are the sky, not the cloud. You are the witness, not the traffic. This uncoupling drains the thought of its power. It is still there, but it no longer defines you. It is just noise, just mental weather, and like all weather, it will eventually change. There is a beautiful old story that illustrates this entire process. A man wanted to tame a wild monkey. At first, he tried to use force. He tied it up with heavy chains, but the monkey shrieked and fought and became even more frantic, hurting itself in the process. Then he tried yelling at it, trying to scare it into submission, but this only terrified the monkey, making it more erratic and unpredictable. Finally, a wise old hermit advised him to try a different way. He told the man to take the monkey to an open field, and in the center of the field, to drive a sturdy, solid post deep into the ground. He then told him to tie the monkey to the post with a long, but strong, rope. At first, the monkey did what it always did. It ran and jumped and tried to flee, but it could only go as far as the rope allowed. After reaching the end of the rope again and again, it would eventually grow tired, and in its exhaustion, it would come back and sit at the base of the sturdy post to rest. Over time, the story goes, the monkey learned that the post was a place of safety and stability. It still had the freedom to run and play within the circle of the rope, but it spent more and more of its time resting peacefully at the foot of the post. In this story, we are the man. The monkey is our restless mind. The chains and the yelling are our futile attempts to fight and suppress our thoughts. And the sturdy post, planted firmly in the ground, is the anchor of our awareness. Most often, the simple sensation of our own breath. We are not trying to kill the monkey or lock it in a cage. We are simply giving it a home base, a place of rest to return to. We have now looked at the nature of this restless mind. We have seen how it is amplified by the silence, how it is driven by a misguided need to protect us, and how our attempts to fight it only make it stronger. And we have discovered the gentle alternative: to watch it, to grant it space, and to provide it with a quiet anchor. We have learned to sit on the riverbank. The next step in our journey is to look more closely at the river itself. What is this debris that floats by, night after night? What are the recurring themes of the monkey's chatter? To find a deeper peace, we must now turn our gentle and compassionate gaze toward the very content of our suffering. As we sit with the awareness of our restless, chattering mind, we begin to notice the recurring themes of its stories. We see the patterns of worry, the loops of memory, the surges of desire and fear. The next step on our path is to look beneath this surface chatter and ask a deeper question. What is the fundamental nature of the experience that fuels this restlessness? The Buddha, in his profound investigation of the human condition, identified a core characteristic of life, a truth so fundamental that understanding it is the very first step toward liberation. He gave it the name dukkha. This ancient word, from the Pali language, is often translated simply as suffering. But this translation is incomplete. It can evoke images of dramatic pain and tragedy, and while dukkha certainly includes that, its meaning is far more subtle, more pervasive, and more intimately familiar to all of us. Perhaps a better translation would be unsatisfactoriness or dis-ease. It is like wearing a shoe that is just a little bit too tight. It may not cause agonizing pain, but it prevents you from ever feeling truly comfortable. There is a constant, low-level friction, a sense that something is not quite right. This is dukkha. It is the background hum of discontent that so often underlies our lives, and it is the primary fuel for the monkey mind's frantic search for a more comfortable position. To truly understand it, we can look at it in three distinct, yet interwoven layers. The first layer is the most obvious. It is the dukkha of pain, what we might call the suffering of suffering. This is the clear, undeniable pain that life inevitably presents to us. It is the physical pain of a migraine headache, of a chronic illness, of an unexpected injury. It is the sharp, emotional pain of losing someone we love, the sting of being rejected or betrayed, the deep grief that comes with separation. It is the frustration of failure, the anxiety of uncertainty, the fear that grips us when we feel unsafe. No human life is exempt from this form of dukkha. It is a raw, unavoidable part of our existence. Our restless mind often takes this initial pain and multiplies it. It replays the hurtful words someone said to us over and over again. It relives the moment of loss, reopening the wound each time. It takes the physical pain in our body and builds elaborate stories of fear around it, projecting it into a future of endless agony. This first type of dukkha is the explicit pain, the overt challenges and sorrows that require no deep philosophy to recognize, only the honest admission of our own vulnerability. The second layer of dukkha is far more subtle and perhaps more insidious because it arises from our happiness. This is called the suffering of change. It is the discomfort that is secretly woven into our most pleasant experiences. Think of a perfect, beautiful moment in your life. Perhaps it was a stunning sunset on a long-awaited vacation. In that moment of beauty and joy, was there not, somewhere in the back of your mind, a tiny, quiet whisper that said, "I wish this could last forever"? That whisper, that subtle clenching, that awareness of the moment's fleeting nature, is a form of dukkha. It is the suffering born from our attachment to pleasure and our deep resistance to the fact that all things, especially pleasant things, must change and come to an end. The delicious meal is soon over, the joyful celebration concludes, and the guests go home. The first flush of a new romance matures and transforms. A moment of great success is immediately followed by the pressure to repeat it, or the fear of losing what has been gained. This does not mean that we should not seek or enjoy happiness. The wisdom here is not to become cynical or to renounce joy. It is to recognize that our attempts to cling to pleasure, to freeze it in time, are a source of deep, underlying anxiety. Our monkey mind is constantly chasing the next pleasant experience, believing that if it can just gather enough of them, it will finally be content. Yet, because each pleasant experience is temporary, the chase is endless. We achieve a goal, feel a moment of satisfaction, and then almost immediately, the mind asks, "What's next?" This relentless pursuit, this inability to simply rest in the pleasure of the moment without fearing its departure, is the suffering of change. It is the reason we can have a life filled with many wonderful things and still feel a profound lack of ease. We are trying to build a solid house on shifting sands, and the constant effort is exhausting. The third layer is the deepest and most pervasive. It is the dukkha of conditioned existence itself. This is the ultimate shoe that doesn't fit. It is the baseline level of unsatisfactoriness that is inherent in being a separate, vulnerable self in a world of constant flux. It is the friction of our very existence. It is there even when there is no overt pain and when no specific pleasure is fading. It is the vague, background hum of anxiety, the feeling that something is fundamentally missing or incomplete. It is the subtle stress of having to maintain and defend our identity, our opinions, our possessions. It is the inherent unreliability of life. Our bodies age, get sick, and grow weak. The people we rely on can change or leave. The world itself is unpredictable and often fails to meet our expectations. This deep dukkha is the engine of our modern, consumerist society. It is the voice that whispers, "If you just get that new car, that bigger house, that promotion, that perfect partner, then you will be happy. Then this feeling of unease will finally go away." And so we strive and we acquire, and for a brief moment, we might feel a sense of relief. But soon, the background hum returns, because its source was never external. Its source is the very condition of being a finite self in an infinite, impermanent world. To hear this, to truly consider it, can feel disheartening. It might sound like a profoundly pessimistic view of life, but this is where we must be very gentle and clear. Acknowledging dukkha is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of supreme realism and courage. Imagine you have been feeling unwell for a long time, with a low-grade fever and a constant lack of energy. You could ignore it, pretend everything is fine, and hope it goes away on its own. Or you could go to a skilled and compassionate physician. If that physician runs some tests and gives you a clear diagnosis, are they being pessimistic? Number. They are offering you the truth. They are naming the condition, which is the absolutely essential first step before any healing can begin. The Buddha is like this physician of the mind. In identifying Dharma, he is not saying that life is nothing but misery. He is saying, this background hum of unsatisfactoriness that you feel, This sense that something is always slightly off-key. It is real. You are not imagining it. It is not a personal failure. It is a fundamental part of the human condition. There is an incredible liberation in this diagnosis. It means we can stop blaming ourselves. We can stop the frantic search for a perfect external solution, and instead begin to turn our attention inward to find the true cause and the true cure. The story of the Buddha's own life is the perfect illustration of this truth. He was born a prince, Siddhartha Gautama, and his father, the king, was determined to shield him from all forms of suffering. He grew up in a world of unimaginable luxury, with palaces for every season, the finest silks, the most delicious foods, and every pleasure at his fingertips. He was intentionally kept away from the sight of anyone who was old, sick, or dying. By all external measures, his life was perfect. Yet, despite having everything a person could possibly desire, he felt a deep, inescapable unease. His perfect life was still the shoe that didn't fit. This was the third, most subtle form of dukkha at work. It was a spiritual malaise, a sense that even in the midst of all this pleasure, something was fundamentally lacking. This inner discontent compelled him to leave the palace walls, where for the first time he encountered the raw realities of life. An old man, a sick man, and a corpse. These sights did not introduce him to suffering. They simply gave a name and a face to the dukkha he already felt within his own heart. This courageous confrontation with reality is what set him upon his path, not to escape from the world, but to understand it so deeply that he could be free within it. In recognizing this fundamental truth of dukkha, especially the suffering that arises from the fact that our happy moments are destined to change, we are naturally led to a crucial question. Why does this constant change cause us so much pain? If pleasure is fleeting and life is inherently unreliable, our suffering is not caused by the change itself, but by our reaction to it. We suffer because we desperately try to hold on to what is pleasant and violently push away what is unpleasant. We are fighting a futile battle against the most fundamental law of the universe. To find peace, we must learn to understand and flow with this law, the profound truth of impermanence. We have seen that the nature of our experience is colored by a fundamental sense of unsatisfactoriness, a feeling that things are never quite right. We called this dukkha, and we saw that much of this unease, especially the suffering that arises even from our happiness, is born from the fact that our pleasant experiences are fleeting. This leads us directly to the next great truth, a law so fundamental that it governs every atom in the cosmos and every thought in our minds. This is the law of impermanence, or anicca. The ancient masters understood that existence is not a collection of static objects, but a dynamic, unfolding process. They compared it to a great river. Life is a river, constantly flowing, constantly changing. You cannot step into the same river twice, for the water that touched your foot a moment ago is already downstream, and new water has taken its place. Our suffering, in large part, comes from our refusal to accept this reality. We stand on the bank of this flowing river and we try to do the impossible. We try to grab hold of the water, to stop its flow, to build a dam, and create a permanent, unchanging pool of pleasant experiences. Or we are haunted by the memory of water that has already passed, trying desperately to reach back in time. This struggle against the current, this resistance to the natural, ceaseless flow of life, is the very source of our exhaustion and our pain. The law of anicca operates on every conceivable scale. Look out into the vastness of the night sky. Every star you see is a temporary event. It was born from a cloud of dust and gas. It shines for millions or billions of years, and it will eventually die, collapsing into a white dwarf or exploding in a supernova. The galaxies themselves are in constant motion, dancing a cosmic ballet that unfolds over eons. Nothing is fixed. Now, bring your attention to our own planet. The mountains that seem so solid and eternal are, on a geological timescale, rising and eroding in a slow-motion breath. The continents drift upon a sea of magma. The seasons turn in a reliable, yet ever-changing cycle of birth, growth, decay, and renewal. The very cities we build, which feel so permanent, are constantly being altered. Buildings are erected and torn down. Streets are rerouted. Neighborhoods change their character. Everything is a process. Nothing is a finished product. To recognize this is not to become nihilistic or to feel that nothing matters. It is to align ourselves with the fundamental rhythm of reality. It is to understand that change is not a flaw in the system. Change is the system. It is the vibrant, dynamic, and creative energy of the universe itself. This universal law is not just something that happens out there in the stars or the mountains. It is happening within you, right now, in the most intimate way imaginable. Consider your own body. You may think of it as a solid, continuous thing, but it is a river of change. Scientists tell us that millions of your cells are dying and being replaced every single second. The lining of your stomach is renewed every few days, your skin every few weeks. Over the course of several years, nearly every atom in your body is replaced. The person you were, physically, 7 years ago, no longer exists. Even your breath, the most constant companion in your life, is the very embodiment of impermanence. There is an in-breath, a pause, and an out-breath. It arises and it passes away, moment after moment. You cannot hold on to a breath. To try is to suffocate. Life is in the letting go. And if your body is a river, your mind is a waterfall, an even more rapid and turbulent flow of change. Sit for just a moment and try to hold on to a single thought. You will find it is impossible. A thought appears in your awareness, seemingly from nowhere. It may linger for a moment, and then, just as mysteriously, it vanishes, replaced by another, and another, and another. Our emotions are the same. A wave of anger can surge up, feeling all-consuming and powerful. But it too will crest, and eventually subside if we let it. A feeling of joy can bubble up, illuminating our entire being, but it too will transform into something else. Our typical response to this inner waterfall is to become frantic. When a pleasant thought or feeling arises, we grasp at it. We cling to it, saying, "More of this, don't go." When a painful thought or emotion appears, we push it away. We resist it, saying, "Get away from me. I don't want this." Both of these actions, the grasping and the pushing, are a form of fighting reality. They are a struggle against the natural law of anicca. And this struggle, this inner friction, is what generates so much of the heat of our anxiety and the ache of our sorrow. This battle against impermanence is precisely what keeps so many of us awake at night. The sleepless mind is a mind at war with time. When we lie in bed ruminating on the past, we are fighting anicca. We are replaying a mistake, an argument, a moment of embarrassment. We are mentally trying to travel back up the river to change what has already flowed by. We are wrestling with ghosts. It is an utterly impossible and draining task. The past is gone. It exists only as a flickering memory in the present moment. To be trapped in regret is to be chained to a phantom. Similarly, when we lie in bed, consumed by anxiety about the future, we are also fighting anicca. We are trying to control what is, by its very nature, uncontrollable and uncertain. We create rigid mental blueprints of how things should be, and then torture ourselves with all the ways reality might deviate from our plans. We are trying to chart the exact course of a river that is alive and constantly carving new paths. This attempt to solidify the future, to nail it down, is a recipe for perpetual tension. The wise path is to gently and repeatedly unhook our minds from the ghosts of the past and the phantoms of the future, and bring our attention back to the only place where life is actually happening. Right here, in the present moment, in the simple, changing reality of this one breath. There is a profound message of hope contained within this law of impermanence. It can seem frightening at first, the idea that nothing lasts. But this truth is a double-edged sword, and its other edge is one of profound consolation. Just as our moments of joy are temporary, so too are our moments of pain. The intense wave of anxiety that feels like it will drown you right now is, by its very nature, impermanent. It will change. It will subside. The deep sorrow that feels like a permanent feature of your landscape is also a cloud that will shift and transform. The painful thought that is looping in your mind is not a permanent resident. It is a temporary visitor. Understanding this does not magically erase pain, but it changes our relationship to it. It gives us the strength to endure the storm, knowing that no storm lasts forever. It is the deep, abiding knowledge that, as the saying goes, this too shall pass. Peace comes not from a life without storms, but from the wisdom to know that the sky will always, eventually, clear. There is a famous Buddhist story that illustrates this journey of discovery with heartbreaking beauty. It is the story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. She had one beloved son who fell ill and died. Consumed by a grief so powerful it bordered on madness, she refused to accept his death. She picked up his small body and wandered through her village, going from door to door, desperately begging for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man, seeing her profound suffering, directed her to the Buddha. She laid her son at the Buddha's feet and pleaded, "Can you give me the medicine that will cure my boy?" The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "I can, but to make the medicine, I require one ingredient. I need you to bring me a single mustard seed from a house in this village where no one has ever lost a child, a husband, a parent, or a friend." Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her search once more. At the first house, a woman answered the door. "Can you spare a mustard seed?" Kisa Gotami asked. "Of course," the woman said. As she was about to take it, Kisa Gotami remembered the Buddha's condition. "In this house," she asked, "has anyone ever died? Have you ever lost a loved one?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, lady," she said, "the living are few, but the dead are many. Please do not remind me of my deepest grief." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. Everywhere she went, the story was the same. Everyone was willing to give her a mustard seed, but every single family had been touched by death. One had lost a parent, another a sibling, another a spouse. As the day wore on, a profound shift began to happen within her. She realized that her suffering, which had felt so singular and isolating, was in fact the universal inheritance of all beings. The pain of loss was not her private curse, but the shared thread that connects all of humanity. With this deep understanding, the frantic energy of her personal grief began to soften. She took her son's body to the cremation ground, and as she looked at the fires, she finally understood. "My little one," she thought, "death is not just for you, it is the law for all. Her personal pain had opened the door to a universal truth, and in that truth, she found the first step toward healing. She had finally understood anicca. We have now seen that our reality, from the largest galaxy to the smallest thought, is in a state of constant, unrelenting change. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is fixed. This realization, once we truly let it sink in, naturally leads to perhaps the most profound and challenging question of all. If everything is changing, including my body and my mind, then who is this I that I am so desperately trying to protect? If the river is always flowing, who is the one standing on the bank? When we look deeply for this solid, permanent self that we believe is at the core of our being, what do we actually find? This inquiry takes us to the heart of the next great truth, the liberating and radical wisdom of no self. We have journeyed through two profound truths about our existence. We have seen that life is characterized by a fundamental unsatisfactoriness, a sense of dis-ease we call dukkha, and we have seen that the entire universe, including our own bodies and minds, is in a state of constant, relentless flux, a great river of impermanence, or anicca. This leads us, inevitably, to the most radical, the most challenging, and ultimately, the most liberating insight of this path. It is a question that arises naturally from all we have observed so far. If everything is changing, if my body is not the same from one moment to the next, and my thoughts and feelings are like clouds passing in the sky, then who or what is this I that I believe to be at the center of it all? When I say, I am worried, or I am happy, or I can't sleep, who is this I? This inquiry leads us to the truth of anatta, often translated as no self. This teaching does not claim that you do not exist. It is not an argument for annihilation. Rather, it is an invitation to conduct a deep and honest investigation, to look for this solid, continuous, independent self that we are so certain is there. What we discover is that, like searching for the owner of an empty house, when we look closely, no one is home. Let us begin this investigation together. With gentle curiosity, we assume there is a core self, a kind of CEO in the headquarters of our mind, who is in charge of the whole operation. Let's try to find this CEO. Is this self your body? It seems so at first. But as we have seen, your body is in a constant state of change. Your cells are continuously dying and being replaced. The body you have now is not the same body you had as a child, or even the same body you had last year. If you were to lose a limb in an accident, would you cease to be you? Of course not. So, the body seems to be something that you have, not something that you fundamentally are. It is part of the process, but it is not the permanent core we are looking for. Very well, perhaps the self is not the body, but our feelings and emotions? Let's examine this. Are you your happiness? If so, when sadness arises, have you disappeared? Are you your anger? If so, when the anger fades, have you died? Our feelings are like the weather, constantly changing. They are visitors that come and go within our awareness. To identify ourselves with any single feeling would mean our very existence is flickering on and off, moment by moment. So, our feelings must be something we experience, not something we are. They are not the CEO. What about our thoughts? Surely, I think, therefore I am. Is the self the voice in your head, the stream of thoughts? But as we have learned, thoughts are incredibly ephemeral. They arise and pass away without our permission. If you were your thoughts, which thought would you be? The angry thought? The compassionate one? The thought about what to have for lunch? And more importantly, if you are your thoughts, then who is the one that is aware of your thoughts? The very fact that you can observe your thoughts implies that you are not them. You are the space in which they arise. So, thoughts too are part of the process, but they are not the central, unchanging self. We can apply this same inquiry to all the other parts of our experience, our memories, our perceptions, our habits, our impulses. What we find, again and again, is that these are all temporary, conditioned phenomena. They are all processes, not things. When we look deeply for a solid, independent entity at the center of it all, we cannot find one. So, if this permanent, independent self cannot be found in any of our component parts, what is it? The profound insight of anatta is that the self we believe in is not a thing, but a story. Our brain is a magnificent narrative machine. To make sense of the billions of bits of information it receives every moment and the constant flow of inner experience, it creates a coherent narrative. And for any good story, you need a protagonist, a main character. That main character is the story of me. This story is woven together from strands of memory, from beliefs we have absorbed, from the labels society gives us and we give ourselves. I am a parent. I am an American. I am a teacher. I am an anxious person. This story is incredibly useful. It allows us to function in the world, to have relationships, to make plans. But we make a crucial error. We mistake the character for the actor. We believe that this story, this constructed identity, is who we truly are in a solid and permanent way. We believe the CEO in our head is real, when in fact, there is just the bustling activity of the company, the interdependent processes of body, feeling, and thought, all working together to create the impression of a central controller. Why does this philosophical insight matter when you are lying awake at 3 in the morning? It matters profoundly because we spend an enormous amount of our life's energy, our psychic fuel, in the desperate, exhausting business of defending this fictional character. This is the burden of the ego. Think of the things that cause you the most stress and anxiety. They are almost always threats to this story of me. When someone criticizes our opinion, we feel it not as a disagreement about an idea, but as a personal attack on me. When we make a mistake at work, we feel a deep sense of shame because it tarnishes the image of the competent me. When we feel socially awkward, we are anxious about how the character of me is being perceived by others. Most of the frantic thoughts that keep us awake are born from this defense. What will they think of me? Why did I have to say that stupid thing? I am going to fail this presentation. My life isn't going according to plan. To understand anatta is to begin to set this immense burden down. When a painful thought arises, like, I am a failure, instead of identifying with it completely, we can see it with a new wisdom. We can recognize it as just a thought, a transient event passing through awareness, a piece of dialogue from the story, but not the truth of our being. It's not truly mine. It doesn't belong to a solid self, because no such self can be found. It's just a thought. This creates a psychological distance, a breathing room, the need to be right, the fear of looking foolish, the desperate protection of our reputation. All of these begin to lose their life or death grip on us. We can hold our story more lightly. We can even learn to laugh at it. We become less like a brittle statue, terrified of being chipped, and more like the flowing river itself, flexible, adaptable, and resilient. A classic Buddhist text beautifully clarifies this, with the story of a monk named Nagasena and a king named Milinda. The king, a sharp and inquisitive man, approached the monk and asked his name. The monk replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was merely a designation, a convenient name. and that no permanent, individual person could be found. The king was incredulous. He challenged the monk, pointing to his own royal chariot. "If there is no person," the king argued, "then what is this chariot? Is it a person?" Nagasena then began a gentle deconstruction. He asked the king, "Your Majesty, is the chariot the wheels?" "No, Reverend Sir," the king replied. "Is it the axle? Number, is it the wooden frame, or the reins, or the whip?" To each question, the king had to answer no. Nagasena then asked, "Is the chariot something separate from all of these parts?" Again, the king had to say no. Finally, Nagasena concluded, "Then, Your Majesty, this word, chariot, is just a name, a convenient label we use when the wheels, the axle, the frame, and the reins are all assembled together in a certain way. It has no independent existence apart from its components." The king was stunned into silence, realizing the profound truth of the analogy. Nagasena then declared that the name Nagasena was just like chariot. It is a label for the temporary coming together of the body, the feelings, the thoughts, and consciousness. There is no separate, solid self to be found. We have now traveled a great distance in our understanding. We have looked at the three fundamental characteristics of all existence, known as the three marks of existence. We've seen the inherent unsatisfactoriness of experience, dukkha. We've seen the universal law of constant change, anicca. And now, we have investigated the elusive nature of the self and found only a dynamic process, not a static entity, the truth of anatta. These three truths are not dogmas to be believed, but realities to be seen for ourselves. They are the deep diagnosis of the human condition, the foundational understanding that underpins the entire path to peace. With this profound bedrock of wisdom now established, we can shift our focus. We can move from understanding the fundamental nature of things to examining the precise, moment-to-moment mental actions that create our turmoil. We can now look directly at the primary mechanism that the monkey mind uses to generate dukkha, the very engine of its restlessness, the act of grasping, of desiring, of clinging to things in a world where nothing can be held. We turn now to the nature of attachment. We have now journeyed to the very bedrock of our existence. We have looked unflinchingly at the three marks of existence, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of life, dukkha, the universal law of constant change, anicca, and the elusive, process-like nature of our own identity, anatta. With this map of reality in hand, we can now ask the most practical question of all. If our experience is characterized by these truths, what is the specific action of the mind that takes these raw conditions and transforms them into personal suffering? The Buddha's answer to this question was precise and profound. He identified a single root cause, a primal energy that drives the restless monkey mind. He called it tanha. This word is often translated as craving or desire, but its essence is more accurately captured by the word thirst. It is a deep, instinctual, and seemingly unquenchable thirst. It is the engine of our restlessness, the force that keeps us perpetually seeking something more, something different from what is here right now. Imagine you are at the beach, and you scoop up a handful of warm golden sand. This sand represents any experience in life, whether pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Our deep instinct, when we find a pleasant experience, is to clench our fist. We think that by squeezing tight, we can possess it, keep it, make it last forever. But what happens when you squeeze a fistful of sand? The tighter you clench, the faster the grains slip through your fingers, until all you are left with is an empty, aching hand. The suffering was not inherent in the sand itself. The suffering was in the act of clenching, in the futile attempt to hold on to what is, by its nature, unholdable. Tanha is this clenching. It is the mental grasping at experiences, and it is the direct cause of our dis-ease. This thirst manifests in three distinct, though often overlapping, forms. The first and most recognizable form is the thirst for sense pleasures, known as kama tanha. This is the craving for pleasant experiences that come through our six senses. The sight of something beautiful, the sound of enchanting music, the smell of a favorite flower, the taste of delicious food, the feeling of a comfortable touch, and even the experience of pleasant thoughts and daydreams in the mind. Our modern world is a grand temple built in honor of this thirst. The entire industry of advertising is dedicated to stimulating it, to creating a sense of lack and promising that fulfillment is just one purchase away. The endless, hypnotic scroll on our phones is a hunt for the next microdose of pleasant stimulation, the next beautiful image, the next validating comment, the next entertaining video. We chase these pleasures, believing that if we can just accumulate enough of them, we will finally be happy. The problem, as we know from the law of anicca, is that no pleasant sensation can last. The delicious meal ends, and we are left only with the memory. The captivating movie finishes, and we are returned to our ordinary reality. The pleasure of a new purchase fades, and soon the mind is already looking for the next acquisition. This is the hedonic treadmill. We have to keep running, keep chasing, keep consuming, just to maintain a baseline level of temporary satisfaction. This endless seeking keeps the mind in a state of agitation. It can never be at peace, because it is always looking outside of itself for the next hit of pleasure. When we lie down to sleep, this thirst doesn't simply vanish. The mind continues its search, replaying past pleasures and fantasizing about future ones, forever restless, forever thirsty. The second form of thirst is deeper and more entwined with our identity. It is the thirst to become, or bhava tanha. This isn't just a craving for a fleeting pleasure. It is the craving to be something, to solidify, enhance, and perpetuate our sense of self. It is the deep, powerful drive to exist in a particular way. This is the thirst to be successful, to be respected, to be seen as intelligent or attractive or virtuous. It is the craving to be a good parent, a valued employee, a spiritually enlightened person. It is the relentless ambition that tells us who we are right now is not enough, but who we could become in the future will be. This thirst is the fuel for much of our culture's obsession with achievement and self-improvement. It is the force that makes us meticulously curate our online personas, presenting an idealized version of ourselves to the world. The suffering born from this thirst is immense. It creates a constant, low-grade pressure to perform, to measure up, to prove our worth. We live with a persistent fear of failure because any failure is seen as a direct threat, not just to an outcome, but to our very identity, to the story of who we think we are. We can never truly rest in the present moment because our mind is always projecting itself into a future where we have finally made it, where we have finally become the person we long to be. At night, this thirst manifests as anxious planning, as comparing ourselves to others, as worrying about our career path, our life's purpose, our legacy. We are haunted by the gap between the self we are and the self we crave to become. And this chasm of desire is a place where no sleep can be found. The third form of thirst is the dark twin of the second. It is the thirst for non-existence, or vibhava tanha. This is the craving to get rid of something, to annihilate an unpleasant experience. When faced with pain, whether physical or emotional, This thirst arises as a powerful urge to escape. It is the voice that whispers, "I can't stand this feeling," or "I just want it all to go away." It is the craving for oblivion. We see this thirst at work all around us and within us. It is the impulse to use alcohol or drugs to numb emotional pain. It is the zoning out in front of a screen for hours on end to avoid confronting our own thoughts. It is the chronic procrastination that seeks to push away the discomfort of a difficult task. When we are consumed by shame or despair, the thought, "I just want to disappear," is the raw expression of vibhavatana. Even the desperate yearning for sleep can, paradoxically, become a form of this thirst. When we are tormented by our own minds, sleep appears as a form of temporary annihilation, a way to shut off consciousness and escape the pain. But this very desperation, this violent pushing away of our present reality, creates more tension, more anxiety, and drives sleep further away. This thirst for non-existence is a battle against what is. It is a refusal to be with our own experience. And like any battle, it is exhausting, draining our energy and leaving us in a state of agitated despair. True peace can never be found by trying to destroy our experience, but only by learning to meet it with wisdom and compassion. A powerful story is told of two monks, one senior and one junior, who were on a long journey. They came to a river where the current was strong and the water was muddy. A beautiful young woman was standing there, hesitating, afraid to cross. Seeing her predicament, the senior monk, without a word, walked over, lifted her into his arms, carried her across the swirling river, and gently set her down on the other side. He then continued his journey. The junior monk was aghast. He was utterly scandalized. His mind began to race with judgment. "We are monks. We have taken vows not to touch a woman. How could he do such a thing? It is a serious violation of our precepts." For the next several hours, as they walked in silence, the junior monk was consumed by his inner turmoil. He replayed the scene again and again, his indignation growing with every step. He was carrying the weight of his judgment like a heavy stone. Finally, as they neared their destination, he could bear it no longer. He burst out and confronted his companion. "Brother," he said, his voice trembling with righteousness, "I must ask you, why did you do that? Why did you touch that woman against all of our sacred vows?" The senior monk stopped, turned to the junior monk, and looked at him with a calm, gentle expression. He replied softly, "Brother, I put that woman down by the riverbank hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story perfectly illustrates the nature of mental clinging. The physical event was brief and is long past. The senior monk, living in the reality of the present, let it go completely the moment it was over. The junior monk, however, was clinging. He was clinging to his rigid interpretation of the rules, clinging to his judgment, clinging to the memory. He was the one still carrying the woman in his mind, and the burden was crushing him. This is what we do. An event happens, and long after it is over, we continue to carry it, to replay it, to suffer from it, all because of the mental act of clinging. The story of the junior monk's inner torment highlights his attachment to his own ideas, but it also reveals another powerful energy at work: his intense disapproval, his judgment, his condemnation of the senior monk's actions. This energy of pushing away, of rejecting, of ill will, is the inseparable twin of desire. If tanha is the force that pulls us toward what we like, its counterpart is the force that violently shoves away what we dislike. This powerful energy of aversion is the next stop on our journey into the workings of the mind. We have explored the nature of tanha, the primal thirst that pulls us toward pleasant experiences, the force of grasping that leaves our hands and our hearts aching and empty. Now we must turn our attention to its inseparable twin, its shadow self. This is the energy that arises when we encounter what is unpleasant, unwanted, or painful. It is the force of pushing away, of rejection, of resistance. In the Buddhist teachings, this is known as dosa, a term that encompasses the entire spectrum of aversion, from the slightest irritation to the most intense rage. If attachment is an act of pulling the world toward us, aversion is an act of violently shoving it away. And in this act of shoving, we create a profound and exhausting form of suffering. The Buddha used a powerful metaphor for this state of mind. He said that holding on to anger and resentment is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. Regardless of whether you ever hit your target, you are the one who is being burned, right here, right now. This energy of aversion is not always a dramatic explosion of rage. More often, it is a slow, smoldering fire that poisons the atmosphere of our minds. It manifests on a wide spectrum. It begins with simple irritation and annoyance, the low-level frustration we feel when we are stuck in traffic, when a neighbor is being too loud, when technology doesn't work as it should. It is the quiet impatience we feel with a slow-talking person, or the subtle contempt we feel for someone who holds a different opinion. This is the kindling of the fire. Left unchecked, this kindling can easily grow into the flames of judgment and criticism. This is the mental habit of constantly finding fault, of scanning the world not for what is good, but for what is wrong. It is the harsh inner critic that berates ourselves for our own mistakes, and the cynical outer critic that finds flaws in everyone and everything. Living with a judgmental mind is like living in a house where the walls are lined with sandpaper. Every movement creates friction and discomfort. When this aversion is directed at a specific person or event from the past, it becomes resentment. This is the smoldering fire at its most potent. To hold a grudge is to sentence ourselves to reliving a past hurt over and over again. We keep the wound from healing by mentally picking at the scab, replaying the injustice, rehearsing what we should have said or done. We believe we are holding the other person accountable, but we have actually imprisoned ourselves. We are drinking a small dose of poison every day, hoping that the other person will get sick. At the far end of the spectrum, this energy erupts into raw hatred and rage, a destructive inferno that consumes all wisdom and compassion. But it is in the quieter, more persistent forms of irritation and resentment where most of us live, and where the most chronic damage to our peace of mind is done. This smoldering fire finds its perfect fuel in the silence and darkness of the night. When the distractions of the day fall away, the mind, if it is conditioned by aversion, often transforms our bed into a courtroom. We are the star prosecutor, the righteous judge, and the unanimous jury. We place the person who wronged USA boss, a partner, a family member on the witness stand in our imagination. And there, in the theater of our minds, we finally deliver the perfect, eloquent, devastating monologue that we were too slow, too shocked, or too polite to deliver in the moment. We dismantle their arguments. We expose their flaws. We win the case, definitively. And in that moment of imaginary victory, we might feel a fleeting sense of power, a surge of righteous justification. But what is actually happening in our bodies during this mental trial? Our heart rate increases, our muscles tense, our jaw clenches, our nervous system, unable to distinguish between a real threat and a vividly imagined one, floods our body with the stress hormones of adrenaline and cortisol. We are, quite literally, preparing for a fight. We are marinating in the biochemistry of rage, and the cruel, heartbreaking irony is that the person we have on trial in our head is most likely fast asleep, completely unaware of the drama we are staging in their name. The only person being punished, the only person being harmed by this mental poison is us. We are the sole victim of our own imaginary war. We are holding the hot coal, feeling its searing heat burn our own flesh, while believing we are somehow hurting someone else. Is it any wonder that sleep is impossible when our body and mind are in a state of high alert, ready for battle? What then is the alternative? Our usual responses to anger are twofold, and both are unskillful. The first is to suppress it. We feel the heat of irritation or anger rising, and we clamp down on it. We push it down. We pretend it isn't there because we believe it is a bad or unspiritual emotion. But this is like trying to hold a lid on a pot of boiling water. The pressure builds and builds until it eventually erupts, often at an inappropriate time or with a force far greater than the original trigger warranted. Or it turns inward, manifesting as depression or physical illness. The second skillful response is to express it without restraint, to let the fire rage. This may provide a momentary sense of release, but it almost always causes harm, burning our relationships, creating regret, and sowing the seeds for future conflict. It simply adds more fuel to the fire. The path of wisdom offers a middle way. It is the path of mindful observation. It teaches us to neither suppress the fire nor let it run wild, but to relate to it with wisdom and care. When the energy of anger or irritation arises, the practice is to turn your attention inward, to pause, to breathe, and to ask with gentle curiosity, what is this? What does it actually feel like? Instead of getting lost in the story of blame, he shouldn't have said that. We investigate the raw, physical sensations of the emotion. There is a tightness in my chest. There is heat in my face. My jaw is clenched. We simply note these sensations without judgment. We are learning to hold the hot coal, not with our bare hands, but with the cool, metal tongs of mindful awareness. We are not identifying with the anger. We are observing it as a temporary, impersonal energy passing through our system. In the space created by this observation, the anger is no longer being fed by our stories. It loses its fuel, and like any fire without fuel, it naturally begins to cool down and dissipate on its own. There is a further, more profound wisdom that can act as a powerful antidote to the poison of resentment. It is the insight that people's harmful actions almost always come from their own suffering. Hurt people. When someone acts with cruelty, with greed, with arrogance, their behavior is a manifestation of their own inner turmoil, their own delusion, their own dukkha. Their mind is on fire, and they are spreading sparks. This does not mean we must excuse or tolerate harmful behavior. Setting firm boundaries to protect ourselves is an essential act of self-compassion. But this understanding can fundamentally change our inner response. Instead of meeting their fire with more of our own fire, we can meet it with the cool water of understanding. We can see them not as an evil monster, but as a deeply suffering being. This perspective does not help them, necessarily. It helps us. It protects our own hearts from being hardened and poisoned by hatred. The Buddha once perfectly demonstrated how to meet this energy. The story tells that a man, furious with the Buddha's teachings, came to him and began to shout a long and vicious stream of insults. He called him a fool, a charlatan, and a fraud. The Buddha did not interrupt. He listened with a calm and patient silence. When the man had finally exhausted his rage and fallen silent, the Buddha spoke to him softly. "My friend," he said, "if you purchase a gift for someone, and that person does not accept the gift. To whom does the gift then belong? The man, taken aback by the unexpected question, thought for a moment and replied, "Well, it would belong to me, of course." The Buddha nodded gently. "Exactly so," he said. "Today, you have offered me the gift of your anger and your insults. I do not accept it. This is the ultimate teaching on protecting our own peace. We are not obligated to accept the gifts of anger, hatred, or judgment that others try to hand us. We can politely and internally refuse the delivery. Our inner peace is our own sovereign territory, and we do not have to allow it to be polluted by another's poison." We have now seen the two great forces that agitate the mind: the pulling force of attachment that grasps at pleasure, and the pushing force of aversion that shoves away pain. But often, the most severe suffering we experience comes not from the initial event itself, the pleasure, or the pain, but from the story we tell ourselves about it, the second layer of judgment and commentary we add on top. This self-inflicted wound is a crucial source of our suffering, and it is what the Buddha powerfully described as the second arrow. We have now explored the two great magnetic forces of the mind: the pull of attachment, tanha, which grasps at pleasure, and the push of aversion, dosa, which shoves away pain. These are the immediate, reactive forces that create so much of our inner turmoil. But there is a deeper, more subtle mechanism at play, a way in which we take the ordinary pains of life and, through our own mental habits, amplify them into extraordinary suffering. The Buddha illustrated this with a simple yet profoundly insightful parable. It is the parable of the second arrow. He said that an ordinary person, when walking through the world, will inevitably be struck by an arrow. This is the first arrow. It is the unavoidable pain of life itself. But then, this person, distraught by the pain of the first arrow, does something further. They lament, they worry, they obsess, thinking, "Why was I struck? What did I do to deserve this pain? This is a terrible injustice." And in doing so, they take out and shoot themselves with a second arrow. The pain of this second arrow, the Buddha taught, is entirely mental. It is self-inflicted, and it is 100 times more painful than the first. A wise person, he concluded, also gets struck by the first arrow, but they do not foolishly shoot themselves with a second. This simple story contains a key that can unlock us from the prison of our own suffering. Let us first look closely at the first arrow. This is the non-negotiable reality of the human condition. It is the raw, unavoidable pain, discomfort, and loss that are an inherent part of life. Life shoots first arrows. No amount of wealth, virtue, or planning can guarantee a life free from them. These arrows come in all sizes. There are the small daily arrows. You stub your toe on a piece of furniture. You get stuck in a long traffic jam when you are already late. You receive a curt, dismissive email from a colleague. A friend cancels plans at the last minute. You spill coffee down the front of your clean shirt. These are the minor pains and frustrations that are woven into the fabric of any ordinary day. Then there are the larger arrows, the ones that strike with greater force. You lose a job you depended on. A relationship you cherished comes to an end. You receive a frightening medical diagnosis. Someone you love dies. These are the great, life-altering pains that can bring us to our knees. The first and most crucial part of wisdom is to understand and accept that these first arrows are not a personal failure. They are not a sign that you are doing something wrong. They are simply a feature of the landscape. To expect a life without them is to set ourselves up for constant disappointment. The first arrow is simply what is happening now. let us turn our attention to the second arrow, for this is where our true suffering lies, and where our true power for liberation is found. The second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. It is the thick layer of mental commentary, judgment, blame, and fear that we heap on top of the clean, simple pain of the initial event. These second arrows come in many forms, and they are the ammunition that our monkey mind uses to torment us, especially in the quiet of the night. One of the most common second arrows is blame. The first arrow hits, we get criticized at work, and immediately we fire a second arrow of blame. It's my boss's fault. He's always been unfair. He doesn't know what he's talking about. We create an external enemy, and in doing so, we generate the hot, burning energy of resentment, which, as we have seen, only poisons ourselves. Another common second arrow is self-pity, or playing the victim. The first arrow hits, we get sick before a planned vacation, and we fire the second arrow of victimhood. Why does this always happen to me? Nothing ever goes right for me. My life is so unfair. This arrow feels heavy and damp, creating a sense of helplessness and despair that can be even more debilitating than the initial sickness. The opposite of blame is self-criticism, an arrow we are often brutally skilled at using against ourselves. The first arrow hits, we make a mistake in a social situation, and we immediately fire a barrage of second arrows. I'm such an idiot. Why did I say that? I'm so awkward. Everyone must think I'm a fool. This is the arrow of shame, and it creates a deep, internal wound, convincing us that we are fundamentally flawed. And perhaps the most common second arrow in our anxious age is catastrophizing. This is the arrow of fear, pointed directly at the future. The first arrow hits, the stock market takes a dip. We fire the second arrow of catastrophic thinking. This is a disaster. I'm going to lose all my money. I'll end up destitute. My future is ruined. We take a single event and project it into a future of absolute ruin, creating immense anxiety about a reality that has not even happened. The quiet of the night is when the second arrow factory goes into overtime. The events of the day are over. The first arrows have all landed. And now, with nothing else to distract us, the mind begins its grim work. We lie in bed and take a minor event, perhaps a moment of miscommunication with our partner. The first arrow was the brief, uncomfortable feeling during the conversation. But now, hours later, we start manufacturing the second arrows. We shoot the arrow of regret. I should have said this instead. We shoot the arrow of blame. If only they had listened to me. We shoot the arrow of fear. Is our relationship in trouble? We turn a single, small, transient event into a feature-length drama of suffering. And we are the writer, director, and star. This is why we cannot sleep. We are not suffering from the events of our life anymore. We are suffering from our story about those events. We are bleeding, not from the first arrow, which may have been just a scratch, but from the dozen of self-inflicted wounds we have added on top. The path to peace, then, is not about trying to dodge all the first arrows of life. That is impossible. The path to peace lies in learning not to shoot the second arrow. The great secret is that there is a space between the impact of the first arrow and the automatic firing of the second. For most of us, that space is infinitesimally small. The reaction is so fast, so habitual, that it feels like it is part of the initial event. The purpose of mindfulness practice is to expand that space. It is to create a sacred pause. When the first arrow strikes, when you feel that initial sting of disappointment, embarrassment, or physical pain, the practice is to stop, to take a conscious breath, and to turn your attention inward not to the story, but to the raw sensation of the first arrow itself. You simply acknowledge the clean pain. Ah, this is disappointment. This is what it feels like in my body. There is a tightness in my stomach. Or, this is fear. There is a coldness in my hands. You give the raw feeling your compassionate, non-judgmental attention. You allow it to be there, without immediately trying to fix it, blame someone for it, or run away from it. In that pause, in that moment of mindful acceptance of the clean pain of the first arrow, a miracle happens. The habitual chain of reaction is broken. You see the second arrow lying on the ground next to you. You see the bow of blame in your hand, and you realize, with a clarity that can change your life, that you have a choice. You do not have to pick it up. You do not have to shoot it. This is not about suppressing your feelings or becoming a robot. The pain of the first arrow is still real, and it deserves your compassion, but you are no longer multiplying your pain. You are no longer infecting the wound. You are learning to suffer skillfully, which means suffering less. This is the ultimate act of kindness you can offer yourself. Recognizing our deeply ingrained habit of firing second arrows is a profound moment of awakening. It reveals that a vast portion of our mental and emotional suffering is not a random imposition from the outside world, but a direct consequence of our own untrained reactions. This insight is incredibly empowering. It means we are not helpless victims of our circumstances, but it also leads to a proactive and hopeful question. If we can learn to stop engaging in harmful mental habits, can we also learn to actively cultivate beneficial ones? If we can choose not to plant weeds of blame and fear, can we also learn how to intentionally plant and nurture a garden of peace, kindness, and joy in our own minds? This inquiry leads us directly to the essential practice of cultivating wholesome states. In the profound teaching of the second arrow, we discovered a liberating truth. A vast portion of our suffering is not inflicted upon us by the world, but is generated by our own reactive minds. We saw that we have the power to choose not to shoot that second arrow of blame, self-pity, or fear. This realization is the gateway to a still more empowering truth. Not only can we choose to refrain from causing ourselves harm, but we can also actively and intentionally cultivate states of mind that lead to peace, joy, and profound well-being. This is the shift from simply avoiding what is harmful to proactively cultivating what is beautiful. It is the shift from being a passive victim of our mental states to becoming the master gardener of our own mind. Imagine your mind is a garden. For most of us, for most of our lives, this garden has been left untended. We have allowed the winds of chance and conditioning to blow whatever seeds they carry into its soil. As a result, the garden is overgrown. The thorny weeds of anxiety have wrapped themselves around everything. The poisonous nightshade of resentment grows in the dark corners. The tangled vines of obsessive thinking choke out the light. Looking at this chaotic scene, we might feel hopeless, believing this is just the way our mind is. But the wisdom of this path tells us something revolutionary. You are the gardener. The state of the garden is not your fault, but its future is your responsibility. And more importantly, it is your opportunity. You have the power to learn which plants are weeds and which are flowers. You can learn how to gently pull the weeds from their very roots. And you can learn how to intentionally choose, plant, and nourish the most beautiful flowers imaginable. To understand how we do this, we must first reclaim and understand one of the most misinterpreted concepts from the East, the law of karma. In the West, karma is often seen as a kind of cosmic justice system, or as an inescapable fate that dictates our lives. This is a profound misunderstanding. The word karma simply means action, and in the Buddhist sense, It refers specifically to intentional action. It is the intention, the volition, the will behind our thoughts, words, and deeds that is the creative force in our lives. This is a law of nature, as impersonal and reliable as the law of gravity. Every intentional thought we have is a seed. Every conscious word we speak is a seed. Every deliberate action we take is a seed. And every one of these seeds is planted in the fertile soil of our own consciousness. A thought of anger is an anger seed. A word of kindness is a kindness seed. A moment of generosity is a generosity seed. A flash of jealousy is a jealousy seed. These seeds do not simply vanish after the moment has passed. They fall into the mind and they wait. The ones we water with our repeated attention are the ones that will sprout, grow roots, and eventually bear fruit. The mental and emotional landscape of your life right now is the fruit of the seeds you have planted and watered in the past. And the landscape of your future is being determined by the seeds you are choosing to plant and water in this very moment. This is not fate. This is radical empowerment. It means that at any moment, we can choose to stop watering the weeds and start cultivating the flowers. First, we must learn to recognize the weeds. In the garden of the mind, the most invasive and toxic weeds grow from 3 unhealthy roots. The first is greed, or grasping, the energy of I want, I need, I must have. This root sprouts the thorny weeds of addiction, craving, and a perpetual dissatisfaction that is never content with what is. The second root is hatred, or aversion, the energy of I hate it, get it away from me. This root sprouts the poisonous plants of anger, resentment, judgment, cruelty, and jealousy. The third and deepest root is delusion, or ignorance. This is the poor, nutrient-deficient soil that allows the other weeds to thrive. It is the fundamental confusion of not seeing reality clearly, of believing that impermanent things can be made permanent, and of thinking there is a solid self to protect. When we lie awake at night, lost in worry or anger, we are diligently watering these weeds, strengthening their roots, and ensuring a future harvest of suffering. But now we come to the most joyful part of our work as gardeners. We can choose which flowers to plant. The Buddhist tradition speaks of 4 sublime states of mind, 4 magnificent flowers that we can intentionally cultivate until they fill our entire inner world with their beauty and fragrance. They are known as the 4 divine abhodes, or the Brahma Viharas. The first, and the foundation for the others, is loving kindness, or metta. This is not romantic love, but a boundless, unconditional, friendly warmth. It is the sincere wish for all beings, starting with ourselves, to be genuinely happy and well. Metta is the gentle sunshine that warms the entire garden, allowing everything to grow without judgment. We can cultivate it with simple phrases. Lying in bed, instead of worrying, we can gently repeat, "May I be happy, may I be safe, may I be peaceful." Then, we can extend it outwards. "May my loved ones be happy, may my neighbors be happy, may even those I find difficult be happy, may all beings everywhere be happy." This simple practice can radically change the emotional tone of our mind. The second flower is compassion, or karuna. If loving kindness is the wish for others to be happy, compassion is the heart's tender response when we see that they are not. It is the active wish for all beings, including ourselves, to be free from suffering. It is not pity, which looks down from above, but a deep feeling of shared humanity that says, "I understand your pain. It is my pain too." Karuna is the gentle rain that soothes the dry, cracked earth of suffering. It is the direct antidote to cruelty and indifference. When we feel compassion for ourselves, we stop shooting the second arrow of self-criticism. When we feel it for others, we begin to understand that their harmful actions come from their own pain. The third flower is sympathetic joy, or mudita. This is one of the most beautiful and healing qualities we can cultivate. It is the ability to feel genuine happiness at the good fortune and success of others. It is the direct antidote to the poisonous weeds of envy and jealousy, which are a major source of our silent suffering. Our culture often trains us to see life as a competition, where someone else's success somehow diminishes our own. Mudita turns this completely on its head. It teaches us that joy is not a limited resource. When we can celebrate the happiness of others, our opportunities for joy become infinite. It is like delighting in every single flower that blooms in the neighborhood, not just the ones in our own small garden. The fourth and crowning flower is equanimity, or upekkha. This is the deep, unshakable balance of a mind that has seen things as they are. It is the spacious, calm, and open heart that can embrace both the pleasure and the pain of life without being knocked off balance. It is not indifference or coldness. It is a profound and loving wisdom. Equanimity is the rich, stable soil of the garden itself. It understands that all beings are the gardeners of their own minds, that we are all living with the results of our own karma. We can offer our love and compassion, but we cannot control the outcomes. Upekkha is the peace that comes from letting go of the impossible burden of trying to control the world, and instead, resting in a state of profound trust and acceptance. To tend our garden before sleep is a simple, practical act. Instead of falling into the old habit of replaying our grievances and worries, which is like watering weeds all night long, we can make a different choice. We can perform an act of mental cultivation. We can practice gratitude, gently recalling 3 small things from the day that brought a moment of ease or beauty. This waters the seeds of joy. We can practice metta, silently wishing ourselves and others well, filling our minds with warmth instead of friction. A wise Cherokee elder once told his grandson a story that perfectly captures this entire teaching. He said, "Inside of me, there is a terrible fight going on between 2 wolves. One wolf is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, and ego. The other wolf is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, kindness, and faith." The grandson thought about this for a moment and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old man replied simply, "The one you feed. Our thoughts are the food. The mental states we choose to dwell in are the food. Every moment of every day, and every moment of every sleepless night, we are faced with this choice. Which wolf will we feed? Which seeds will we water?" We now see that we are not helpless passengers in our own minds. We are active creators of our inner world. We are the gardeners. We know the difference between the weeds and the flowers, and we understand that we have the power to choose which to cultivate. But to do this work effectively, we need the most fundamental tool of all. We need the ability to be present, to see what is actually happening in the garden in this very moment. We need a way to calm the winds of distraction so we can see clearly what needs to be done. This brings us to the core practical technique, the foundation upon which all other practices are built. The simple, profound, and always available practice of mindfulness, beginning with the anchor of our own breath. We have now arrived at a pivotal turning point in our journey. We have explored the deep truths of our existence, the nature of our suffering, and the hopeful reality that we can be the active gardeners of our own minds. We know which weeds of blame and fear to gently pull, and which flowers of kindness and compassion to intentionally plant. But to do this delicate work, we need a fundamental tool. To tend a garden, you must first be able to stand steadily within it, present and aware, not blown about by every gust of wind. In the midst of the relentless storm of our thoughts, the churning chaos of the monkey mind, we need an anchor. We need something that can hold us steady, something that can bring us out of the turbulent past and the imagined future, and ground us firmly in the calm safety of the present moment. That anchor is the most simple, reliable, and intimate companion we will ever have. It is our own breath. The practice of resting our awareness on this anchor is known as anapanasati, a simple name for the profound art of mindfulness of breathing. Why the breath? Of all the things we could pay attention to, why this simple, repetitive biological function? The ancient masters chose the breath as the primary object of meditation for reasons of profound wisdom. Firstly, the breath is always with us. From the moment of our birth to the moment of our death, it is our constant companion. We do not need any special equipment, any quiet room, or any particular belief system to access it. It is here, right now, wherever you are. It is the ultimate portable sanctuary. Secondly, and most importantly, the breath is always in the present moment. You cannot take a breath that is in the past. You cannot take a breath that is in the future. To be aware of your breathing is, by definition, to be in the here and now. This makes it a perfect and direct antidote to the two primary modes of our suffering: regret, which lives in the past, and anxiety, which lives in the future. The moment you bring your attention fully to the sensation of one in-breath, you have stepped out of the time-traveling machine of your mind and arrived in the only place where life is actually happening. Furthermore, the breath is neutral. Unlike our thoughts, which are often charged with emotion, judgment, and stories, the breath is just a simple physical sensation. It isn't good or bad, it's just happening. This neutrality makes it a stable and calming place to rest our attention, a quiet refuge from the drama of our mental narratives. And finally, the breath is the bridge that intimately connects our mind and our body. You have surely noticed that when your mind is agitated or afraid, your breath becomes short, shallow, and rapid. When your mind is calm and at ease, your breath naturally becomes long, deep, and slow. This connection is a two-way street. While a restless mind creates a restless breath, a calm breath can help to create a calm mind. By simply bringing our gentle, non-judgmental awareness to the breath, we send a powerful signal to our entire nervous system that it is safe to relax, that it is okay to let go of the tension and struggle. So let us explore how to use this simple, powerful anchor. This is not about achieving a special state, but about gently practicing a new way of paying attention. You can do this right now, whether you are sitting in a chair or lying down in bed, preparing for sleep. First, allow yourself to find a comfortable position. There is no need to force your body into a difficult posture. The goal is to be comfortable enough to relax, yet alert enough to be aware. Allow your eyes to gently close, or if you prefer, simply lower your gaze. Take 2 or 3 slightly deeper, slower breaths than usual. Feel the air entering your body, and as you exhale, feel a sense of letting go, of arriving in this moment, in this place. Now, let your breath return to its own natural rhythm. Make no effort to control it, to change it, or to do anything to it. Your only task is to feel it. Let the breath breathe itself, and simply let your awareness rest upon the physical sensations of its movement. For some people, the sensation is most clear at the tip of the nostrils. You might feel the subtle coolness of the air as it enters, and the slight warmth as it leaves. You can rest your attention right there, at that gentle gateway. For others, the sensation is more prominent in the chest, feeling the slight expansion and contraction with each breath. Or, and this is a particularly grounding place to focus, you can rest your attention on your abdomen. Feel the gentle rise of your belly as the breath flows in, and the gentle fall as the breath flows out. Choose whichever location feels most clear and comfortable for you, and simply rest there. Your entire job is to feel the sensation of one breath, rising, falling, in, out. Now we come to the most important instruction of all, the one that holds the key to this entire practice. Sooner or later, and probably sooner, your mind will wander. This is not a mistake. This is not a sign that you are failing or that you are bad at meditating. This is simply what untrained minds do. It is the nature of the monkey. Your mind will drift off into a thought, a memory, a plan, a sound you hear in the next room. The truly magical moment in this practice is the moment you realize this has happened. The moment you notice, oh, I'm not feeling my breath anymore. I'm thinking about my to-do list. That moment of noticing is a moment of mindfulness. In that instant, you have woken up from the dream of thought. And what do you do when you wake up? You do something very simple, and you do it with immense kindness. You gently acknowledge where your mind has gone, perhaps with a soft mental note of thinking, and then you gently, without any judgment or frustration, escort your attention back to the physical sensation of the breath. That's it. That is the whole practice. The practice is not about achieving a state of perfect, unbroken concentration. The practice is in the returning, over and over and over again. Each time you notice your mind has wandered and you gently guide it back, you are strengthening the muscle of your attention and your mindfulness. You are performing a single repetition, a bicep curl for your brain. Think of it like training a puppy. If you are teaching a puppy to sit and it keeps wandering away, you don't get angry or punish it. You just patiently and kindly pick it up and place it back on the spot. We must treat our own minds with this same patient, gentle, and persistent kindness. An old story compares this process to a farmer trying to tame a wild water buffalo. The buffalo, representing our wild, untamed mind, runs everywhere, creating chaos. The farmer, representing the meditator, takes a strong rope, representing mindfulness, and gently ties the buffalo to a sturdy, deeply rooted tree, which represents the breath. At first, the buffalo is furious. It pulls, it strains, it thrashes against the rope, trying to run free. But the tree is firm, and the rope is strong. Eventually, exhausted from its struggle, the buffalo calms down and lies down to rest peacefully at the foot of the tree. Our mind is this wild buffalo. Our practice is to gently, but persistently, keep tying it to the anchor of the breath. At first, it will struggle, but with patient practice, it will learn to rest. So, when you are lying in bed and the storm of thoughts is raging, you do not need to fight the storm. You do not need to wrestle the buffalo. You simply need to find your anchor. Let the storm rage in the background. Your job is to gently place your attention on the simple, physical rhythm of your breathing. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your abdomen. The thoughts will still be there, but you are no longer in the boat being tossed by the waves. You are at the bottom of the ocean, where it is calm and still, feeling the gentle current of the breath, over and over, When the storm pulls you away, you gently return to your anchor. This is the foundation of peace. We have now learned how to find our anchor, how to steady ourselves on a single, reliable point of focus. This is the essential first step. From this newfound place of relative stillness and stability, we can begin to skillfully broaden our field of awareness. We can take this same gentle, non-judgmental attention that we have cultivated with the breath and allow it to expand, to softly and kindly illuminate our entire physical being. This leads us to the deeply relaxing and powerfully grounding practice of the body scan. We have learned to steady our minds by tethering them to the gentle, reliable anchor of the breath. This is the first and most crucial skill in learning to calm the storm within. It gives us a safe harbor, a place to rest when the waves of thought and emotion become overwhelming. Now, from this place of relative stability, we can embark on a new kind of exploration. We can take the light of our mindful awareness, which we have focused into a single point on the breath, and allow it to broaden into a soft, illuminating beam. We will shine this gentle light throughout our entire physical being, exploring our own bodies with a kindness and curiosity that we may have never experienced before. This is the practice of the body scan. Our bodies are not just physical machines for moving through the world. They are living, breathing records of our entire life experience. Our bodies are where we store our stress, our grief, our fear, and our joy. We often use language that reflects this truth without even realizing it. We speak of having a knot in the stomach when we are anxious, of carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders, when we are burdened, of feeling heartbroken from loss, or of having a lump in the throat when we hold back tears. These are not just metaphors, they are physical realities. When our mind experiences stress, it releases hormones that cause our muscles to contract. Over years of unconscious reaction, we develop chronic patterns of tension in specific areas: a clenched jaw, raised shoulders, a tightened diaphragm. We often hold on to these tensions so tightly, for so long, that we no longer even notice they are there. They have become our normal. The body scan is a journey of rediscovery. It is a process of shining the gentle light of awareness into these forgotten, contracted corners of ourselves, and simply by seeing them, inviting them to let go. Before we begin, it is essential to understand the core intention behind this practice. This may sound paradoxical, but the goal of the body scan is not to feel relaxed. This is a crucial point. If you try to force yourself to relax, you will only create more tension, a subtle striving that is the opposite of true release. The goal is far simpler and more profound. The goal is to feel. The goal is to bring a kind, open, non-judgmental awareness to whatever sensations are present in each part of your body as we move through it. The true instruction is to be curious. What is actually here? Is there a feeling of warmth or coolness, tingling or pulsing, heaviness or lightness, numbness or pressure, or perhaps you feel nothing at all? All of these experiences are perfectly valid. There is nothing you are supposed to feel. The practice is simply to be aware of what you do feel. Relaxation, you see, is a natural byproduct of this kind, accepting awareness. When a tense muscle, which has been clenched and ignored for years, is finally bathed in the warmth of your conscious attention, it often does something remarkable. It lets go. It releases its grip all on its own, without you having to force it. It is like a frightened child who finally calms down, not because they were told to, but because they were seen, acknowledged, and held in a safe and loving embrace. So as we embark on this journey, let go of any agenda to achieve a certain state. Simply allow yourself to be an explorer, a gentle investigator of your own inner landscape. Let us begin. Find a comfortable position, lying on your back if possible, perhaps in your bed as you prepare for sleep. Let your arms rest by your sides, your legs uncrossed. Let your body feel heavy and supported by the surface beneath you. Take a few deep, intentional breaths, and with each exhalation, feel yourself sinking a little deeper, letting go of the day. Now, bring your full attention, as best you can, all the way down to your left foot. Narrow your focus until it rests entirely on the toes of your left foot. See if you can feel the sensations in your left big toe. You don't need to wiggle it. Just feel it from the inside out. Is there tingling, warmth, a sense of the fabric of a sock against it? Then, move your awareness to the second toe, the third, the fourth, and the little toe. Then, expand your awareness to include the sole of your left foot, the arch, the heel, where it makes contact with the surface beneath you, and the top of the foot. Just feel whatever sensations are present, or the absence of sensation. And as you breathe in, imagine your breath could travel all the way down your body and into your left foot, bringing it fresh oxygen and awareness. As you breathe out, imagine any tension in the foot just softening, melting away. Now, gently allow your awareness to move up into your left lower leg, your calf, and your shin. Feel the shape of the muscles, the sense of the bone within. Move up to your left knee, noticing the sensations in the front, the back, and deep inside the joint. Then, bring your awareness into the large muscles of your left thigh, the hamstring underneath, and the quadriceps on top, all the way up to your left hip. Just resting your attention here, feeling the whole of your left leg, from the hip down to the toes, breathing, aware. And now, gently let go of the left leg and shift your entire focus all the way down to the toes of your right foot. And we begin the journey again, feeling the right big toe, the other toes, the sole of the right foot, the heel, the top of the foot, breathing with these sensations. Then, moving your beam of awareness up into the right lower leg, the right knee, and the right thigh, feeling its weight, its warmth, its life. Now, holding both legs in your awareness for a moment, just feeling the energy and sensation in both of your legs simultaneously. From here, let your awareness travel up into the pelvic region, the hips, the buttocks, the groin. This is an area where we can hold deep tension. Just notice what is here with kindness. Then, allow your focus to drift into your lower back, a common storehouse of stress. As you breathe in, bring awareness to this area. As you breathe out, invite it to soften and release. Now, move your attention to your abdomen, your stomach. Feel the gentle, rhythmic rise on the in-breath and the gentle fall on the out-breath, connecting back with our anchor. Then, let your awareness expand upward into your chest, feeling the subtle movements here as you breathe. Notice if there is any tightness or openness around your heart. Now, let your attention flow down your left arm, through the upper arm, the elbow, the forearm, into your left hand. Pay special attention to your hand. Feel the palm, the back of the hand, and each finger, one by one. Our hands do so much for us. Just let them rest now. And then, shift your awareness to your right arm, feeling the upper arm, the elbow, the forearm, and your entire right hand, palm, and fingers. Gently, bring your awareness now to the neck and the shoulders, another great reservoir of tension. See if you can invite your shoulders to drop just a little, to melt away from your ears. Feel the muscles in your neck, the back, and the sides. Then, bring your attention to your head. Notice your jaw. Is it clenched, Can you invite it to soften? Just a little. Let your lips rest gently. Your tongue relax in your mouth. Feel your cheeks, your nose, the delicate muscles around your eyes. Let your eyes feel heavy and soft in their sockets. Move your awareness to your forehead. See if you can smooth out any furrows, allowing it to become wide and open. Finally, bring your attention to your scalp and the very top of your head. And now, for a few moments, see if you can feel your entire body, from the tips of your toes to the top of your head, as one single, unified field of sensation, feeling the whole body breathing, the whole body alive, with a gentle, pulsing, tingling energy, the whole body at rest. A story is told of the Buddha speaking with a disciple named Sona, who had been a musician before becoming a monk. Sona was practicing with such fierce, tense effort that he was becoming exhausted and discouraged. The Buddha asked him, "Sona, when you were a musician, tell me, if the strings of your lute were strung too tightly, would it produce a beautiful sound?" Sona replied, "No, Lord, it would not. The strings would break." "And if the strings were strung too loosely?" the Buddha asked. "Then, Lord, it would make no sound at all." "And what if the strings were tuned not too tightly and not too loosely, but just right?" "Then, Lord," Sona said, "it would produce a beautiful and enchanting sound." The Buddha smiled. "So it is, Sona. With our practice, our body and mind are like this lute. So often, we are strung far too tightly with the tension of doing and striving. This body scan practice is an act of gently loosening the strings, not to a point of slackness, but to that perfect, balanced tone of relaxed alertness where true peace can be found. Through this journey, we have cultivated a deep, embodied sense of presence. We have anchored ourselves in the breath, and we have fully inhabited our physical form with a kind and gentle awareness. We have built a stable and grounded platform within ourselves. From this safe and steady place, we are now far better equipped to turn our attention toward the most elusive and often turbulent elements of our experience, the ceaseless stream of our thoughts and the powerful waves of our emotions. We are now ready to learn how to watch them as well, without getting carried away by their currents. We have anchored ourselves in the breath and explored the inner landscape of our bodies with a kind and curious attention. We have created a platform of stability, a safe and grounded place from which to continue our exploration. Now, with this foundation beneath us, we turn our gaze toward the most dynamic and often most challenging aspect of our inner world, the ceaseless, churning river of our own thoughts. For most of our lives, we are not even aware that we are in a river. We are caught in its currents, tossed about by its rapids, believing that we are the river. We are so identified with the content of our thoughts that we mistake their chatter for the voice of reality. The practice of mindfulness offers us a radical new perspective. It invites us to step out of the turbulent water, to sit peacefully on the riverbank, and to simply watch the river of thought flow by. Imagine your mind is a movie theater. Since you were a small child, you have been sitting in the dark, completely captivated by the film on the screen. The film is your stream of thinking. When a scary scene comes on, you feel fear. When a sad scene appears, you feel sorrow. When a thrilling scene unfolds, you feel excitement. You are so engrossed, so lost in the drama, that you have completely forgotten that you are sitting in a theater. You believe you are the character on the screen, that their struggles are your struggles. Their reality is your reality. Mindfulness is the gentle, transformative moment when the lights in the theater turn up just a little. You are still aware of the movie playing on the screen, but for the first time, You also become aware that you are sitting in a seat. You realize, oh, I am not the character in the film. I am the one who is watching the film. This shift in perspective, from being the thought to being the witness of the thought, is the beginning of all freedom. This is the great uncoupling. It is the subtle but profound difference between saying, I am an anxious person, and saying, I am aware of thoughts of anxiety arising in my mind. The first statement is an identity. It is a solid, heavy, and frightening label that you have mistaken for your true self. The second statement is an observation. It describes a temporary event, a passing phenomenon that you are witnessing. The anxiety is no longer who you are. It is simply some weather passing through the vast sky of your awareness. Your thoughts are not facts. They are proposals from your mind, suggestions, echoes of the past, rehearsals for the future. You do not have to believe them. You do not have to obey them. A thought like, you are going to mess this up, might appear in your mind with great force and authority, but it is just a thought. It is a mental pop-up ad. You do not have to click on it. The goal of this practice is not to stop your thoughts or to have a blank mind. A living mind thinks, just as a living heart beats. The goal is to change your relationship to your thoughts, to stop being their prisoner, and to become their compassionate, wise, and spacious witness. To cultivate this skill, we can use several powerful metaphors to guide us. The most classic of these is to see your mind as the sky and your thoughts as clouds. Your true nature, your core awareness, is like the vast, open, boundless blue sky. It is always present, always peaceful, always whole. Thoughts are like the clouds that drift through this sky. Some are light, white, and puffy, like pleasant daydreams or happy memories. Others are dark, heavy, and menacing, like thoughts of fear, anger, or self-doubt. As the witness, as the sky, your job is not to try to hold on to the beautiful white clouds, or to fight and push away the dark storm clouds. Your job is simply to allow them all to be there, to let them float by at their own speed. You recognize that the clouds are not the sky. The weather is not the sky. The sky's fundamental nature remains untouched, no matter how beautiful or how turbulent the weather of the moment may be. Learning to rest as the sky is the essence of this practice. Another helpful image is to imagine yourself sitting peacefully on the bank of a gently flowing stream. The stream is your mind. Each thought that arises is like a leaf floating on the water's surface. As a thought comes into your awareness, you can imagine gently placing it on one of these leaves and watching it drift by, carried away by the current until it disappears from view. Then, you wait for the next leaf. A planning thought appears, you place it on a leaf, and you let it go. A memory appears, you place it on a leaf, and you let it go. A critical thought appears, you place it on a leaf, and you let it go. You are not judging the leaves or trying to stop the stream. You are simply practicing the gentle, non-attached art of letting be and letting go. For a more modern metaphor, you can imagine yourself sitting on a comfortable park bench next to a busy road. The cars, trucks, and motorcycles that drive by are your thoughts. Some are flashy sports cars, exciting thoughts. Some are loud, dirty garbage trucks, unpleasant thoughts. Some are just ordinary sedans, mundane thoughts. Your practice is to simply sit on the bench and watch the traffic go by. You do not run out into the road to try and stop a car you don't like. You do not chase after a car you find beautiful. That would be dangerous and exhausting. You simply sit, watch, and notice the traffic of your mind passing by, knowing that you are safe on the sidelines. In all of these metaphors, the sky, the stream, the road, you are cultivating the identity of the silent, unmoving witness. To make this practice even more concrete, We can use a simple technique called mental labeling or noting. It is a way of acknowledging our thoughts without getting entangled in them. When you are resting your attention on your breath and you realize your mind has wandered, you can make a soft, one-word, non-judgmental, mental note of the type of thinking that has captured you. For example, if you find yourself rehearsing a conversation for tomorrow, you can silently and gently say to yourself, planning, and then you guide your attention back to the breath. If you are lost in a worry, you can note, worrying, and return to the breath. If you are replaying a memory, remembering. If you are judging yourself or someone else, judging. The label is not meant to be another thought to get lost in. It is a tool of recognition. It is like a scientist who briefly classifies a specimen before returning to their main research. This simple act of naming the thought objectifies it, plucking you out of the storyline and reminding you that you are the observer. This technique is incredibly powerful for breaking the cycle of rumination, the endless loop of obsessive thinking that is the primary engine of insomnia. There is a famous Zen story that beautifully illustrates the power of finding the present moment. Even when the mind is filled with the most terrifying thoughts, a man is being chased by a ferocious tiger. He runs as fast as he can until he comes to the edge of a cliff. With no other option, he grabs hold of a thick vine and begins to lower himself down the cliff face. As he hangs there, he looks down and sees another tiger pacing on the ground below, waiting for him. He is trapped. The tiger of his past is behind him, and the tiger of his future is below him. Then, to make matters worse, he sees two small mice, one white and one black, appear from a crevice and begin to gnaw on the very vine he is clinging to. He knows that his time is limited. It is a situation of absolute peril. But just then, out of the corner of his eye, he sees a single, wild strawberry growing from a small ledge on the cliff face. It is ripe, red, and perfect. Reaching out with his free hand, he carefully plucks the strawberry and puts it in his mouth. The story ends with a single line: "How sweet it tasted." Our thoughts are often like these tigers, the regrets of the past and the fears of the future, threatening to devour us. The mice of day and night are steadily eating away at the vine of our life. And yet, even in this precarious situation, the sweetness of the present moment is available. The strawberry is the simple, tangible reality of right now, the feeling of the breath in your body, the sensation of your feet on the floor. The practice is learning to find and savor that strawberry, even when the tigers are roaring. We have now learned to sit on the riverbank and watch our thoughts pass by without being swept into the current. This practice offers us a profound sense of freedom and space. But we know that many of these thoughts are not neutral. They are accompanied by powerful energies, strong currents of emotion that can easily pull us back into the water. Having learned to relate to our thoughts with wisdom, we must now apply this same gentle, courageous awareness to the powerful waves of the emotions themselves. We have learned to sit on the riverbank of our minds, watching the traffic of our thoughts pass by without chasing after them or running into the road. This is a practice that cultivates immense space and freedom. But some of this traffic is more than just thought. It is powered by a much stronger engine. This is the energy of emotion. Our thoughts are like the clouds, but our emotions are the weather itself, the raw, visceral energy of the wind, the rain, the ice, and the sun. When a difficult emotion like fear, grief, or anger arises, it can feel like a sudden and violent storm, threatening to capsize our small boat and pull us into the depths. Our instinct in the face of such a storm is often one of two extremes. Either we try to pretend it isn't happening, we run inside, lock the doors, and close the curtains, hoping it will just go away, or we run out into the storm, shaking our fists at the sky, becoming completely consumed and possessed by its chaotic energy. The path of wisdom offers a third option. It teaches us how to become a wise and seasoned mariner of our own hearts, someone who can be with the storm, respect its power, and navigate its waves without being destroyed by it. It teaches us that emotions are not our enemies. They are messengers, often carrying vital information about our deepest needs and wounds. The problem with our usual strategies is that they are deeply ineffective. The first strategy, suppression, is an act of denial. We feel a wave of sadness or fear rising, and we immediately push it down. We distract ourselves with work, with entertainment, with food, with anything to avoid feeling the discomfort. But suppressed emotion does not vanish. It is like trying to hold a large beach ball underwater. It takes a tremendous and constant amount of energy to keep it down, creating a subtle chronic tension in our body and mind. And eventually, that suppressed energy will find a way to surface. It may explode unexpectedly in a disproportionate burst of anger over something small, or it may manifest as a persistent, low-grade anxiety, a physical illness, or a nightmare that jolts us from our sleep. The second strategy, unrestrained expression, is equally unskillful. This is when we become completely fused with the emotion. We don't just feel anger, we become anger. We are possessed by it, and we act it out without awareness, often saying or doing things that cause great harm to others and to ourselves, leaving a wake of regret and broken relationships. The middle path, the path of mindfulness, is to learn to be with our emotions without being consumed by them. It is a practice of bringing a kind, courageous, and gentle presence to our inner weather. One of the most effective and compassionate frameworks for this practice is a simple, four-step process that can be remembered by the acronym RAIN, popularized by the teacher Tara Brach. RAIN is a shelter we can take in the midst of any emotional storm. It is a way of offering ourselves what we so desperately need in those moments: understanding and kindness. The first step is recognize. This is the moment of mindfulness itself, the act of waking up from the dream of the emotion. Instead of being completely lost in the story of your anger, you take a mental step back and simply name what is happening. You say to yourself, silently and gently, this is anger, or sadness is here, or this is what fear feels like. This simple act of recognition is incredibly powerful. It immediately creates a sliver of space. The emotion is no longer you. It is something you are observing. You are no longer the storm. You are the one who is noticing the storm. This act of naming stops the unconscious momentum of the reaction and begins the shift from being a victim of the feeling to being a witness to it. The second step is allow. This is perhaps the most radical and counterintuitive step. Having recognized the emotion, we make a conscious choice to let it be there. We give up the fight. We stop trying to fix it, change it, or make it go away. We unclench the fist of our internal resistance. This does not mean we like the feeling. You do not have to like the feeling of grief or panic. To allow means to acknowledge the reality of the present moment. Right now, this feeling is here. To fight it is to fight reality, and that is a battle we will always lose. Allowing is an act of profound courage. It is like being stuck in quicksand. Your instinct is to struggle violently, but that struggle is what makes you sink faster. To allow is to stop struggling, to become still, and to let the raw reality of the feeling just be. In this stillness, its grip on you begins to loosen. The third step is investigate. Once we have allowed the emotion to be present, we can bring a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity to it. This is not a mental analysis of why we are feeling this way. It is not about getting lost in the story of the emotion. It is an embodied investigation. The invitation is to ask, with the genuine curiosity of a kind scientist, what is the direct, physical experience of this emotion in my body? You bring your attention inward and explore, where is this sadness located? Is it a heaviness in my chest? A lump in my throat? Where do I feel this fear? Is it a cold knot in my stomach? A buzzing energy in my hands? You can explore its qualities. Is it hot or cold? Is it vibrating or still? Does it have a shape or a color? Is it solid or porous? As you investigate in this way, something remarkable happens. You begin to realize that the emotion you thought was so solid and monolithic is actually just a collection of changing, flowing physical sensations. It is not a monster, it is just energy. And you see, through your direct experience, that like all energy, it is impermanent. It shifts, it changes, and it eventually passes. The fourth and final step is N, nurture. After you have recognized, allowed, and investigated the difficult emotion, the final step is to offer kindness to yourself. This is the act of bringing active compassion to the hurting part of you. You can ask yourself, what does this vulnerable part of me most need to hear right now? And then you offer that message of kindness. A simple and powerful way to do this is with a physical gesture, such as placing a hand gently over your heart, a universal sign of comfort and care. As you hold your heart, you can whisper some words of kindness to yourself, the words you would offer to a beloved friend who was suffering. Phrases like, "It's okay," "Sweetheart, I'm here with you," or "This is so hard, of course you feel this way," or simply, "I love you, I'm not going to leave you." This step is about actively befriending ourselves. It is about learning to become our own source of comfort, safety, and love, especially when we need it most. It is the application of compassion, the healing balm that soothes the wound. There is a wonderful story from the Buddha's life that perfectly illustrates this entire practice. The demon Mara was the embodiment of all that obstructs our peace, fear, doubt, greed, and temptation. Mara would frequently appear to the Buddha to try and disturb his meditation. In the early days, the Buddha might have fought Mara, but he soon learned a wiser way. When Mara would appear, the Buddha would calmly stop what he was doing and acknowledge his presence. He would say, "I see you, Mara. This is recognize." Then, instead of trying to chase Mara away, the Buddha would say something truly extraordinary. He would say, "Welcome, Mara. Would you like some tea?" He would treat his own deepest fears and temptations as honored guests. This is allow and nurture. And the story goes that by being seen, acknowledged, and treated with this unshakable, compassionate hospitality, Mara would lose all his power and simply dissolve away. When we fight our demons, we make them stronger. When we invite them in for tea, when we meet our difficult emotions with the warmth of our own compassionate presence, they lose their ability to terrorize us. The final step of the rain practice, the step of nurture, is so essential, so deeply healing, that it deserves to be explored in its own right. This capacity to offer active kindness and unconditional friendship to ourselves, especially when we are in pain, is perhaps the most transformative skill we can learn on this path. It is the practice that directly heals the wounds inflicted by the second arrow, and it gives us the resilience and grace to meet the inevitable first arrows of life. And so, we will now turn our full attention to this vital and beautiful quality, the practice of self-compassion. In our exploration of navigating difficult emotions, we arrived at the final healing step of the rain practice. Nurture. This is the act of offering kindness to the wounded parts of ourselves, the gesture of becoming our own ally in moments of pain. This single step is so profound, so transformative, and often so foreign to us that it deserves its own deep and gentle exploration. For many of us, if we were to listen closely to the constant, running commentary inside our own heads, we would be horrified. We would hear a voice that is harsh, critical, impatient, and relentless. It is the voice of the inner critic. It is the voice that, after we make a small mistake, says, "You're such an idiot." It is the voice that, when we feel vulnerable, says, "Get over it. You're being weak." It is the voice that constantly compares us to others and finds us lacking. Consider this for a moment. If you spoke to your dearest friends in the same way that you often speak to yourself, would you have any friends left? The answer, for most of us, is a resounding no. And yet, this is the voice we live with, day in and day out. It is a primary source of our anxiety, our shame, and our sleepless nights. The practice of self-compassion is the radical, life-altering antidote. It is the conscious decision to turn down the volume on that inner critic and to cultivate a new inner voice, the voice of an unconditional, wise, and faithful friend. Before we explore what self-compassion is, it is vital to understand what it is not, as our culture is filled with deep misunderstandings about it. Firstly, self-compassion is not self-pity. Self-pity is a state of contraction. It is becoming completely lost in our own problems, creating a narrative that says, "Poor me, my suffering is the biggest and most important thing in the world." It is an isolating experience that disconnects us from others. Self-compassion, in contrast, is spacious. It acknowledges our pain fully, but it holds that pain in a wider, wiser awareness. It does not get lost in the story. It offers kindness to the one who is hurting. It is an empowering state that connects us to our own strength and to the shared experience of being human. Secondly, self-compassion is not self-esteem. Self-esteem, in our culture, is often based on external validation. We feel good about ourselves when we succeed, when we are praised, when we look good, or when we feel we are better than others. This makes our sense of worth incredibly fragile and unstable. When we fail or are criticized, our self-esteem plummets. Self-compassion is a far more stable and reliable source of inner worth. It is not based on evaluation or judgment at all. It is unconditional. It offers us warmth and support, not because we are perfect or successful, but simply because we are a human being who is worthy of kindness. It is there for us in our moments of triumph, and more importantly, it is there for us in our moments of failure and shame. It is the friend that stays with us after everyone else has gone home. Finally, there is a common fear that self-compassion is a form of self-indulgence, that if we are too kind to ourselves, we will become lazy, complacent, and let ourselves off the hook. All the research, however, points to the exact opposite. Imagine a child who is struggling to learn a new skill. Which teacher will be more effective? The one who shouts and criticizes the child for every mistake, creating an atmosphere of fear, or the one who is patient, encouraging, and provides a safe space in which to fail and try again? The answer is obvious. The harsh inner critic is the shouting teacher. It paralyzes us with a fear of failure. Self-compassion is the wise teacher. It provides the inner safety needed to acknowledge our mistakes without shame, to learn from them, and to find the motivation to grow and change. A motivation that comes from a place of care, not fear. So what then are the active ingredients of self-compassion? According to the pioneering researcher, Dr. Kristin Neff, it is composed of 3 core pillars. The first pillar is self-kindness versus self-judgment. This is the most straightforward component. It is the active choice to be gentle and understanding with ourselves when we are suffering, rather than being harsh and critical. It is meeting our own imperfections with warmth rather than coldness. When we fail an exam, the voice of self-judgment says, "You're a failure. You didn't study hard enough." The voice of self-kindness says, "This is really disappointing, and it hurts. It's okay to feel this way. Let's figure out what we can learn from this." It is a conscious shift in our inner dialogue from one of attack to one of support. The second pillar is common humanity versus isolation. This is a profound and healing shift in perspective. When we suffer or fail, our instinct, fueled by the inner critic, is often to feel that we are completely alone. We think, "I am the only one who feels this anxious," or "No one else messes up as badly as I do." This feeling of being abnormal and isolated is a huge part of our pain. The wisdom of common humanity reminds us that imperfection, suffering, and failure are not abnormalities. They are the universal, shared experience of being human. Everyone on this planet makes mistakes. Everyone feels pain. Everyone, at times, feels insecure and inadequate. To be human is to be imperfect. When we remember this, our personal suffering is no longer a wall that separates us from others. It becomes a bridge that connects us to them. Our thought process shifts from an isolating, "Why me?" to a connective, "Just like me. We are all in this together." The third pillar is mindfulness versus over-identification. This connects directly to the practices we have already explored. Mindfulness, in this context, is the ability to hold our painful thoughts and feelings in a balanced, spacious awareness. It means we don't suppress our pain that would be a form of self-unkindness, but we also don't get lost in it. We don't let the emotional storm become the entirety of our reality that would be self-pity. Mindfulness allows us to acknowledge our pain clearly, to say, "Yes, this is a moment of deep sadness," while simultaneously knowing that we are more than our sadness. We are the vast, open awareness that is holding the sadness. This balanced perspective prevents us from being completely swept away by the drama, allowing us to be with our pain without letting it define us. Cultivating self-compassion is a practice, like any other. We can learn to do it through simple, intentional acts. One of the most direct methods is through soothing, physical touch. When you are feeling anxious or overwhelmed, try placing a hand gently over your heart or cupping your own face in your hands. This simple gesture is not just symbolic, it can trigger the release of oxytocin, a hormone that calms the cardiovascular system and creates feelings of safety and connection. It is a direct way of signaling to your nervous system that you are safe and cared for. Another practice is to develop a set of compassionate phrases, a self-compassion mantra, to use when the inner critic becomes loud. Simple phrases like, "This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion I need." Repeating these phrases silently can break the spell of self-judgment and introduce a new, kinder habit. There is a beautiful and simple image that captures the essence of self-compassion perfectly. Imagine a loving mother caring for her young child who is sick with a fever. What is her attitude? Does she berate the child for getting sick? Does she tell the child to just get over it because it is an inconvenience to her? Of course not. Her natural response is one of unconditional tenderness and care. She brings a cool cloth for the child's forehead. She speaks in soft, soothing tones. She holds the child, offering the simple comfort of her presence. She doesn't need the child to be anything other than what they are in that moment: sick, vulnerable, and in need of love. This is the quality we must learn to cultivate for ourselves. We must learn to become this wise, loving parent to our own inner child. When the part of us that is hurting, afraid, ashamed, or has made a mistake cries out, our job is not to scold or ignore it. Our job is to turn toward it with this same gentle, supportive, and unconditional presence, and offer it the comfort and safety it needs to heal. To become a true and faithful friend to ourselves is one of the most revolutionary acts we can undertake. It transforms our inner world from a harsh battlefield into a safe and welcoming sanctuary. And a remarkable thing happens once we establish this foundation of kindness within our own hearts. Once we learn how to nourish ourselves, how to fill our own cup, we find that this warmth, this care, this love naturally begins to overflow. It is no longer a scarce resource we must hoard for ourselves. It becomes an abundant energy that we can now easily and genuinely extend outward to our friends, our family, our community, and ultimately to all beings without exception. This natural expansion of the heart is the practice of universal loving kindness. In our last chapter, we delved into the profound and healing practice of self-compassion. We learned to turn toward our own suffering with the tenderness and care of a faithful friend, creating a safe and warm sanctuary within our own hearts. This is a revolutionary act. It fundamentally changes our relationship with ourselves, transforming the inner landscape from a battlefield of self-judgment into a haven of acceptance. Once we learn how to build this inner sanctuary, once we discover this wellspring of warmth within, a remarkable thing begins to happen. The doors of the sanctuary gently swing open. The light and warmth we have cultivated for ourselves naturally begin to radiate outward. We find that we do not need to hoard this kindness. It is an abundant and renewable resource. This outward radiation of unconditional goodwill is the practice of metta, or loving kindness. Metta is not the sentimental, grasping, romantic love that is often the subject of songs and poems. It is something far more stable, spacious, and profound. It is a steady and unconditional friendliness, a sincere and heartfelt wish for the well-being and happiness of all living things. The best metaphor for metta is the sun. The sun shines its light and warmth on everything in its path without discrimination. It shines on the beautiful rose garden and on the jagged, broken rocks. It warms the majestic eagle soaring in the sky and the tiny insect crawling in the dirt. It does not decide that one is more worthy of its warmth than another. It simply gives. The practice of metta is the training of our own heart to become like the sun, to radiate a steady, impartial warmth to all beings, starting with ourselves. This practice is not simply a pleasant exercise in positive thinking. It is a powerful form of mental cultivation that directly counteracts some of the most toxic states of mind. It is the specific and targeted antidote to the poison of aversion or dosa. You cannot simultaneously feel genuine, heartfelt loving kindness for someone and also feel anger, resentment, or jealousy toward them. The two states are mutually exclusive. As you consciously water the seed of metta, the weed of ill will naturally withers and dies for lack of attention. This practice also works to counteract the brain's innate negativity bias. Our minds, for evolutionary reasons, are like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. We are wired to scan for threats, problems, and faults. A metta practice consciously retrains the brain, guiding it to focus on connection, goodwill, and the inherent worthiness of all beings. It actively combats the feelings of loneliness and isolation that are so prevalent in our modern world by strengthening our felt sense of being part of a vast, interconnected web of life. The formal practice of cultivating metta, known as metta bhavana, is a gentle, systematic expansion of the heart. It unfolds in stages, like ripples spreading out from a pebble, dropped in a still pond, and it always begins in the same place, with ourselves. Let us begin this practice now. Settle into a comfortable position. Allow your eyes to close. Take a few deep breaths, letting go of any tension with each exhalation. And then, bring your awareness to the area around your heart. You may even wish to place a hand gently over your heart center, feeling the warmth of your own touch. Now, silently and gently, begin to offer the phrases of loving kindness to yourself. There is no need to force any particular feeling. Simply offer the intention behind the words, like planting a seed. Silently repeat, "May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live my life with ease." Repeat these phrases slowly, allowing their meaning to resonate in your heart. We must start here, because we cannot offer to others what we do not have for ourselves. We must fill our own cup first. May I be happy. May I be safe. Now, having established this baseline of kindness for ourselves, we begin to expand the circle. Bring to mind a respected person or a benefactor. This might be a teacher, a mentor, or anyone whose kindness has touched your life and for whom you feel a natural sense of gratitude and respect. Picture this person in your mind's eye, and now, direct the flow of loving kindness toward them. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live your life with ease. See them receiving this warmth, this sincere wish for their well-being. Feel your heart naturally opening to this person who has helped you. Next, let the image of your benefactor gently fade, and in its place, bring to mind a dear friend or a beloved family member. Choose someone for whom you feel an easy, uncomplicated affection. Picture them clearly, see their smile. Now, offer them the full warmth of your heart. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live your life with ease. Feel the joy that arises from sincerely wishing for the happiness of someone you love. Rest in that feeling of warm connection. This next step begins to stretch our hearts in new ways. Let the image of your dear friend dissolve, and now, bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see in your daily life, but for whom you feel neither like nor dislike. It could be the cashier at your local store, the person who delivers your mail, a colleague you don't know well. You see their face, but you don't really know their story. Now, see this person in your mind and recognize that, just like you, they also wish to be happy and to avoid suffering. And so, you extend the same wishes to them. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live your life with ease. In this step, we begin to break down the walls of indifference that separate us from most of humanity. We are acknowledging our shared, fundamental aspiration for happiness. Now we come to the most challenging, and perhaps the most transformative, stage of the practice. Gently let go of the image of the neutral person. And now, if you feel ready, bring to mind someone with whom you have difficulty. It is wise to start with someone who is only mildly irritating, not the person who has caused you the greatest harm in your life. The purpose of this step is not to condone their harmful actions or to force a reconciliation. The purpose is purely for you. It is an act of liberation for your own heart. Holding on to anger and resentment is a heavy, painful burden. This practice is an attempt to put down that burden, to free yourself from the poison of ill will, recognizing that this person's harmful actions likely come from their own deep suffering. You can, as an act of compassion for yourself, offer them a simple wish for peace. May you be free from your own suffering. May you too find a sense of peace. If this feels too difficult, that is perfectly okay. You can always return your attention to yourself or to your dear friend. The intention is all that matters. Finally, we let the circle of loving kindness become boundless. Let go of any specific individual and let your heart radiate this warmth outward in all directions. Imagine it extending to everyone in your building, your neighborhood, your city. Then let it expand further to all people in your country and all people on this continent. Let it cross the oceans to embrace all of humanity. Then expand it further still to include all animals, all creatures that fly in the sky, walk on the land, or swim in the water, to all beings, seen and unseen, near and far, large and small. And you hold all of existence in your heart with the final, universal wish. May all beings everywhere be happy, healthy, safe, and live with ease. Rest for a moment in this boundless, sun-like state of unconditional, friendly warmth. The power of metta is not just a gentle, passive feeling. It is a force that can actively transform hostility into peace. An ancient story tells of a time when the Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, attempted to assassinate him. He got a ferocious elephant named Nalagiri, drunk on alcohol, and sent it charging through the streets of the city, directly toward the Buddha. People screamed and fled in terror. The Buddha's own disciples urged him to run, but the Buddha stood perfectly still, calm, and composed. He did not raise a weapon or create a magical shield. He simply turned his full attention toward the raging, trumpeting elephant and radiated a powerful, concentrated field of pure loving kindness. The story says that as the enraged animal entered this palpable field of metta, its fury began to subside. It slowed its charge, its eyes grew softer, and by the time it reached the Buddha, it knelt down before him, completely tamed. This story illustrates that loving kindness is a deep and powerful force, one that can tame the raging elephants of anger, hatred, and fear, both in the world around us and, more importantly, within our own hearts. This practice of loving kindness is a potent medicine for the anger and resentment we feel in the present moment. It helps us to soften our hearts and see our shared humanity with others. But sometimes, the anger we carry is not a present moment irritation, but a deep, old wound from a past betrayal or injustice. For these festering wounds, a more specific and focused kind of letting go is often needed. We must learn the courageous and deeply healing art of forgiveness, not as a gift to the person who harmed us, but as a profound gift of freedom for ourselves. We have explored the beautiful, expansive practice of metta, learning to radiate a sun-like warmth from our hearts to all beings. This practice is a powerful way to dissolve the present moment feelings of irritation and ill will that can cloud our minds. But sometimes, the darkness we feel is not a passing cloud, but a heavy, cold stone that we have been carrying in our hearts for a very long time. It is the stone of a past hurt, a deep grievance, a betrayal that we cannot seem to let go of. This is the burden of unforgiveness, and as long as we carry this stone, our hearts can never be truly light. Our minds can never be truly at peace. To hold on to resentment is one of the most exhausting things a human being can do. There is a saying that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. We are the only ones who suffer. The person who harmed us may be living their life completely oblivious to our pain. While we lie awake at night, reopening the wound, reliving the injustice, bathing our own minds in the toxic chemistry of bitterness. The practice of forgiveness, then, is not something we do for the person who harmed us. It is a profound act of self-love. It is the courageous and liberating decision to finally put down the heavy stone, not because they deserve it, but because we deserve to be free. Before we can even begin to approach this delicate practice, it is absolutely essential that we clear away the thicket of misunderstandings that surrounds the word forgiveness. For many of us, the very idea is offensive because we believe it means something that it does not. So let us be very clear. Firstly, forgiveness is not condoning. It is not saying that what happened was okay. A harmful act was a harmful act. A betrayal was a betrayal. Forgiveness does not excuse the behavior. It does not erase the wrongness of the act. You can forgive the person while still holding the clear understanding that their action was deeply harmful. Secondly, forgiveness is not forgetting. It does not mean inducing a state of amnesia where the memory of the event disappears. The memory may very well remain, but forgiveness fundamentally changes our relationship to that memory. It is the practice of carefully and skillfully removing the venom from the memory's sting. The scar may remain, but it no longer throbs with fresh pain. It becomes a healed part of our history, rather than an open wound in our present. Most importantly, forgiveness is not reconciliation. This is a vital distinction. Forgiving someone does not mean you must allow them back into your life, speak to them, or trust them ever again. Forgiveness is a purely internal process. It is something you do inside your own heart, for your own sake. Reconciliation, on the other hand, is an external, interpersonal process. It requires two people. It requires that the other person is remorseful, has acknowledged their actions, and has changed their behavior in a meaningful way. In many cases, reconciliation is neither possible nor wise. You can absolutely forgive someone completely for the harm they caused, while also making the wise and self-protective decision to keep them at a safe distance. To forgive is to free yourself from the prison of the past. It does not mean you have to hand the other person the keys to your house. Finally, forgiveness is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of immense courage and strength. It takes far more strength to look at a deep wound and commit to the difficult work of healing it than it does to cling to the familiar pain of victimhood and resentment. The practice of forgiving another person is a gentle, internal process that must be undertaken at your own pace. You may wish to start with a relatively small hurt, rather than the deepest wound of your life. Find a quiet moment. Let yourself get comfortable. Bring to mind the person and the event. The first step is to fully and honestly acknowledge the pain. Let yourself feel the hurt, the anger, the sense of injustice. You can say silently to yourself, "What you did hurt me deeply. I acknowledge the pain and the suffering that this caused in my life." We do not bypass the pain. We honor it. We give it our compassionate attention. Only then can we begin the work of letting it go. Now, holding this person in your mind, you can begin to offer the phrases of forgiveness. Remember, you are doing this for your own freedom. You might silently say, "I have been carrying this burden of anger and resentment for a long time, and it is heavy. For my own peace of mind, for my own well-being, I am working to let it go." You might try another phrase. "I understand that you likely acted from your own deep pain, your own fear, and your own confusion. For the harm that came from your own suffering, I forgive you." And perhaps the simplest and most powerful phrases are these: "I forgive you for what you have done. I release you." And then, you must add the most important part. In forgiving you, I set myself free. Breathe with these phrases. Feel their intention. This is not a magic spell. You may not feel a sudden rush of release. It is a process, like melting a block of ice. Each time you practice, you are applying a little bit of warmth, and slowly, over time, the hardness begins to soften and melt away. For many of us, as difficult as it can be to forgive others, there is one person who is even harder to forgive: ourselves. We can be haunted for years by our own past mistakes, by the harm we have caused, by the times we did not live up to our own values. We can be our own harshest judge and cruelest jailer. The practice of self-forgiveness is essential for finding true inner peace. The process is similar. Bring to mind an action from your past that you carry with guilt or shame. First, acknowledge the action and the harm it caused without making excuses. I acknowledge that I did this. I acknowledge the pain it caused, both to others and to myself. Then, practice the wisdom of common humanity. See the person you were at that time. Understand that you acted from the level of awareness, wisdom, or pain that you had in that moment. If you knew then what you know now, you would have acted differently. Offer this understanding to your past self, and then offer the words of forgiveness. I know I acted from a place of confusion and pain. For the suffering I caused, I am truly sorry. I forgive myself. I am learning. I am growing. I am worthy of my own compassion. The power of forgiveness to transform a life is perhaps best illustrated by the incredible story of a man named Angulimala. His name literally meant garland of fingers, because he was a terrifying and brutal serial killer who wore a necklace made from the fingers of his many victims. One day, he saw the Buddha walking and decided to make him his next victim. But no matter how fast Angulimala ran, he could not catch up to the Buddha, who was just walking calmly. Exhausted and confused, he shouted for the Buddha to stop. The Buddha replied, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." In that moment, something shifted deep within the murderer. He threw down his weapons and dedicated his life to the path of peace, becoming a monk. This was the first forgiveness, the Buddha's unconditional acceptance of a man others saw as a monster. But Angulimala's journey was not over. When he would walk into villages to beg for his food, people would recognize him and, unable to forgive his monstrous past, would throw rocks and refuse him food. He had to learn to forgive them for their inability to forgive him. And most profoundly, he had to learn to forgive himself for the terrible harm he had caused. He bore the consequences of his past actions with patience, and through his deep practice of meditation and self-forgiveness, he eventually became a fully enlightened being, a symbol that no one is beyond redemption, and that inner freedom is not dependent on the forgiveness of others, but on our own capacity to let go. The act of forgiveness, both of others and of ourselves, is a profound way of unburdening the heart. It is the choice to untether ourselves from the painful histories that keep us anchored in the past. It allows us to walk into the present moment with a new lightness and freedom. But what about the difficult realities of the present that we cannot simply forgive or forget? What about a chronic illness, a permanent disability, a difficult financial situation, or a global crisis that we cannot control? For these present moment realities, another kind of surrender is required. It is not about letting go of the past, but about letting go of our war with the present. It is the deep and courageous practice of radical acceptance. In our exploration of the heart, we have delved into the courageous act of forgiveness, the practice of making peace with our past. It is the conscious choice to put down the heavy stones of old resentments, not for others, but for the sake of our own freedom. This untethers us from the ghosts of yesterday. But what about today? What about the difficult, unchangeable realities of our present moment? We are all faced with circumstances we did not choose and would not choose. A chronic illness, a difficult financial reality, the limitations of our own aging bodies, a global crisis unfolding on the news. For these present moment struggles, a different kind of surrender is required. It is the practice of radical acceptance, the art of stopping our war with reality. For much of our lives, we walk around with a story in our heads of how things should be. The weather should be sunny, the traffic should be light, our bodies should be healthy, people should be kind. And when reality does not conform to our story, which it rarely does, we engage in a constant, low-grade, and utterly exhausting internal battle. Radical acceptance is the profound and peaceful decision to declare a ceasefire. It is absolutely crucial to first understand what radical acceptance is not, for the very word acceptance can trigger our deepest fears of powerlessness and defeat. Firstly, and most importantly, acceptance is not approval. Accepting a situation does not mean you agree with it, condone it, or like it. You can radically accept that your boss is behaving unfairly without approving of their behavior. You can radically accept that you have a painful illness without liking the fact that you are sick. Think of it this way: when you are caught outside in a downpour, you can stand there, shaking your fist at the sky, shouting, "It shouldn't be raining. This is ruining my day." This is non-acceptance. It is a futile argument with reality, and it only adds misery to the discomfort of being wet. Or you can take a breath and acknowledge the simple fact: it is raining. This is acceptance. You don't have to like the rain. You just have to stop arguing with it. Only then can you make a wise decision about what to do next: to seek shelter, to open an umbrella, or to simply walk on. Secondly, acceptance is not passivity or resignation. It is not throwing up your hands in defeat. In fact, radical acceptance is an incredibly active and courageous state of mind. It is the essential first step for any kind of wise and effective action. You cannot solve a problem if you refuse to acknowledge its existence. You cannot navigate your way out of a forest if you refuse to accept that you are lost. You cannot begin effective medical treatment if you are in denial about your diagnosis. Acceptance is the act of clearly seeing and acknowledging the facts on the ground, so that you can then respond to those facts with wisdom and skill, rather than with panicked, wishful thinking. It is saying a clear, firm, and unsentimental yes to the reality of the present moment, so that you have a solid foundation from which to move forward. The pain of our lives so often comes not from the difficult reality itself, but from our ceaseless resistance to it. There is a deep truth in the saying, "What you resist persists." When we fight against a present moment reality, we are pouring our precious life energy into a battle we can never win. Reality will always win. It is like trying to push a solid brick wall. The wall doesn't feel a thing. The only result is that we get a bruised shoulder and an exhausted body. The wall is the first arrow, the difficult circumstance. The act of relentlessly pushing against it, telling ourselves it shouldn't be there, is the endless volley of second, third, and fourth arrows that creates the real suffering. This constant internal friction, this state of being at war with what is the source of so much of our chronic stress, anxiety, and unhappiness. We are trying to swim against a powerful current, and we wonder why we are so tired all the time. This pattern is never more apparent or more destructive than when we are trying to sleep. Let's paint the all too familiar scene. It is 2 o'clock in the morning. You are wide awake. The first arrow is the simple, neutral fact of your wakefulness. Now, observe the typical reaction, which is one of non-acceptance. The mind immediately starts firing second arrows. This is terrible. I have to get to sleep right now. This is the arrow of panic. If I don't sleep, I will be a complete zombie tomorrow. I won't be able to function at my meeting. This is the arrow of catastrophizing. Why can't I ever just sleep like a normal person? My body is broken. This is the arrow of self-judgment and victimhood. This entire cascade of reactions, this war with the fact of being awake floods our nervous system with cortisol and adrenaline. These are the hormones of the fight or flight response. They are literally the opposite of the hormones required for sleep. Our very resistance to sleeplessness is the chemical guarantee that it will continue. Now consider the radical alternative. You are awake at 2 in the morning. You notice the frantic, panicked thoughts beginning to arise. And instead of getting swept up in them, you pause. You take a breath, and you practice radical acceptance. You say to yourself, quietly and gently, okay, the reality of this moment is that my body is lying in bed, and my mind is awake. This is what is happening right now. You drop the fight. You stop demanding that reality be different. You let go of the struggle. You accept the simple truth of your wakefulness, without adding the second arrow of panic about it. In that moment of surrender, a profound shift occurs. The pressure is off. The internal war has ended. Your nervous system gets the message that there is no emergency, no threat to fight. And in that state of quiet, non-striving acceptance, the conditions for rest are naturally created. Paradoxically, it is only by fully accepting that we are not sleeping, that we create the possibility for sleep to arise. There is a simple Zen story that captures this wisdom perfectly. A visitor came to see a wise old Zen master in his monastery. The visitor was very impressed by the beauty of the grounds, but noticed that there were weeds growing here and there among the meticulously raked gravel and beautiful flowers. The visitor said, "Master, this is a beautiful garden, but it is spoiled by all of these weeds." The old monk smiled and replied, "I used to think so too. For many years, I fought a great war with these weeds. I would spend hours every day trying to pull every last one, and I would become furious and frustrated when they grew back. My war with the weeds was ruining my peace. Then one day, I realized that the reality of this garden includes flowers, and it includes weeds. I stopped fighting the war. I accepted that weeds are part of the garden. The moral is clear. Our life is this garden. It will always contain beautiful flowers and unwanted weeds. We can spend our entire lives in a state of frustrated warfare against the weeds, or we can accept their presence as part of the whole tapestry of life. It is only from this place of acceptance that we can truly appreciate the beauty of the flowers. When we finally stop our exhausting war with reality, when we lay down the heavy weapons of our resistance and simply allow the present moment to be exactly as it is, something remarkable happens. The vast mental and emotional energy that was being consumed by the futile struggle is now freed up. The inner space that was once filled with the deafening noise of our complaints and our arguments becomes quiet. And in that newfound quiet, we can begin to perceive things that we were too busy fighting to notice before. In that silence, we can finally hear the subtle music of our lives that was playing all along. We can start to see the simple, profound, and often overlooked goodness that is also an inseparable part of our reality. This courageous act of accepting the whole of our experience, the pleasant, and the unpleasant, opens the door to the gentle and deeply healing practice of gratitude. We have journeyed through the courageous practice of radical acceptance, learning to stop our exhausting war with the present moment. By laying down our weapons of resistance, we create a space of inner peace, a quiet clearing in the dense forest of our minds. Now, standing in this quiet clearing, we can begin to shift our gaze. For most of our lives, our attention has been trained like a spotlight to seek out problems. We scan our lives, our bodies, and the world for what is wrong, what is broken, what is missing, what needs to be fixed. Gratitude is the conscious, gentle, and radical act of redirecting that spotlight. It is the choice to turn our attention away from the single, withered plant in the corner of the garden, and to instead behold the thousands of flowers that are already in full bloom. We so often live our lives like treasure hunters, seeking a distant, imagined diamond, so focused on the horizon that we fail to notice the small, perfect, and priceless diamond lying at our own feet. The practice of gratitude is simply learning to bend down and pick it up. To understand why this practice is so necessary, we must first understand a fundamental feature of our own minds, the negativity bias. For our ancient ancestors, survival depended on being hyper-aware of threats. The one poisonous snake in the grass was far more important to notice than the 1,000 beautiful, non-threatening flowers. The sound of a snapping twig that might signal a predator was far more critical to hear than the gentle song of a bird. As a result, our brains evolved to be like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. Bad news, criticism, and fear stick to us, while good news, compliments, and moments of joy often slide right off. This ancient survival mechanism is still operating within us, but in our modern world, it is often a source of chronic unhappiness. It causes us to obsess over a single critical comment in an email while ignoring dozens of positive interactions. It makes us lie awake at night, fixating on one small thing that went wrong during the day, while completely overlooking the countless things that went right. Gratitude is not a sentimental or naive practice of pretending that the snakes don't exist. It is a highly practical and necessary form of mental retraining. It is the skill we can cultivate to bring our perception back into balance, to consciously acknowledge the flowers as well as the snakes, and in doing so, to see a truer, fuller, and far more beautiful picture of our own lives. The deepest form of this practice lies in learning to find joy in the utterly ordinary, in the fabric of our moment-to-moment sensory experience. Our lives are already overflowing with simple, profound pleasures, but our minds, busy chasing bigger and better things, have forgotten how to notice them. Let us take a moment to reawaken our senses. Think of the simple joy of taste, the first sip of warm coffee or tea in the morning, the aroma, the warmth spreading through your body, the simple, nourishing taste of a piece of bread, the clean, cool relief of a glass of water when you are truly thirsty. Think of the sense of touch, the feeling of a soft, warm blanket wrapped around you on a cool evening, the sensation of warm water washing over your hands, the comfort of a favorite sweater against your skin, the solid, reliable feeling of the ground beneath your feet, holding you up without question. Think of the sense of sight, the way the light changes at dawn or dusk, the intricate, perfect geometry of a snowflake, or the veins on a leaf, the comforting face of a loved one, or the joyful, uncomplicated greeting of a pet, the simple, expansive beauty of a clear blue sky. Think of the sense of sound, the rhythmic, soothing patter of rain against a window, the cheerful sound of birdsong outside your window in the morning, the power of a favorite piece of music to stir your soul, and even the profound, deep nourishment of silence itself. And what about the miracle of your own body? Can you feel a flicker of gratitude for your heart, which has been beating faithfully, without a single command from you, every moment of every day of your life? Can you feel gratitude for your lungs, which breathe for you even when you are asleep, drawing in the air that sustains you? Gratitude for the simple magic of your eyes that can see, your ears that can hear, your legs that can carry you. When we begin to pay attention in this way, we realize that we are swimming in an ocean of small miracles. We are already rich beyond measure. A powerful and practical way to bring this into your life, especially as a way to prepare the mind for sleep, is to create a simple bedtime ritual of gratitude. As you lie in bed, instead of allowing your mind to be pulled into its usual vortex of worries about tomorrow and replays of today's frustrations, make a conscious choice. Intentionally bring to mind 3 specific things from your day for which you feel grateful. The key to this practice is specificity. Don't just think, "I'm grateful for my family." Go deeper. Think, "I am so grateful for the specific way my child laughed at dinner tonight." Don't just think, "I'm grateful for my home." Think, "I am so grateful for the feeling of my comfortable bed and the safety of these walls around me right now." This specificity makes the feeling of gratitude visceral and real, not just an abstract concept. This practice does 2 remarkable things. Firstly, over time, it trains your mind to start actively looking for things to be grateful for during the day. You become a treasure hunter for moments of goodness. Secondly, it changes the entire emotional and chemical climate of your mind as you prepare to sleep. You are steeping your consciousness in feelings of contentment, appreciation, and peace, rather than in anxiety, lack, and resentment. There is a beautiful story about a Zen monk named Ryokan that perfectly illustrates the wealth that gratitude provides. Ryokan lived a life of extreme simplicity in a small, dilapidated hut at the foot of a mountain. One evening, a thief broke into his hut, only to discover that there was absolutely nothing of value to steal. Ryokan, returning and finding the thief, felt a sense of pity for him. "You have come such a long way to visit me," Ryokan said. "You should not have to leave empty-handed. Please, take my clothes as a gift." The thief, completely bewildered, took the monk's only robes and fled into the night. Ryokan then sat naked, watching the brilliant full moon shine through the large hole in his roof. And he thought to himself, "Poor fellow, I wish I could have given him this beautiful moon." Ryokan's poverty was only material. His true wealth, which was inexhaustible, was his capacity to appreciate the simple, profound beauty of the present moment, a treasure that no one could ever steal from him. Gratitude is the key that unlocks this inner treasure. When we regularly practice gratitude, we begin to realize that our happiness is not contingent on getting more. It is found in appreciating what we already have. This profound insight naturally causes us to question the relentless, stressful pursuit of more that defines so much of our lives. It makes us look at all the things we are chasing, all the possessions and statuses we believe we need in order to be happy, and ask a new question. What if true freedom, true wealth, and true peace lie not in acquiring more, but in courageously and wisely letting go of that which is non-essential? This inquiry leads us to the graceful and liberating practice of simplifying our lives, the gentle art of renunciation. Through the gentle lens of gratitude, we have begun to see the world differently. We have learned that our true wealth lies not in what we can acquire, but in our capacity to appreciate what is already here. This shift in vision naturally leads us to question the very foundation of our modern culture, the relentless, anxiety-fueled pursuit of more possessions, more achievements, more followers, more experiences. We are taught from birth that the path to happiness is paved with addition, but the great wisdom traditions suggest a radically different path. They suggest that true freedom and deep, abiding peace are found not in addition, but in subtraction. This is the gentle and liberating art of renunciation. In our culture, this word can sound harsh and frightening. It evokes images of grim self-denial, of a life stripped of all joy and pleasure. But this is a misunderstanding. In its truest sense, renunciation is not about what you lose. It is entirely about the freedom, the lightness, and the peace that you gain. Imagine your life is a long and arduous journey. Renunciation is simply the wise and joyful practice of learning to travel with light luggage. It is the art of consciously looking into your backpack and asking of every single thing you are carrying, is this truly essential for my journey, or is it just weighing me down? Ofif, end of 26. The most tangible place to begin this practice is with our physical possessions. We live in a world that constantly tells us that happiness is just one purchase away. We are conditioned to believe that acquiring things will fill the emptiness we feel inside. And so, we accumulate. Our homes become museums of our past desires, filled with clothes we never wear, gadgets that have been replaced, books we will never read, and objects that we hold on to out of a vague sense of obligation. We believe that we own our possessions, but in a very real sense, our possessions own us. Every object in your home requires a piece of your life force. It must be bought, stored, cleaned, maintained, insured, and worried about. It occupies not just physical space, but mental space as well. A cluttered home often mirrors and contributes to a cluttered mind. The practice of physical renunciation is a gentle inquiry. It is not a call for a stark or empty life, but an invitation to hold up each object and ask with honesty, does this object support the life I want to live? Does it bring me joy or utility? Or is it simply an anchor from the past, a heavy stone in my luggage? The act of letting go, of simplifying our physical environment, can create a startling and profound sense of inner space and peace. With each bag of clutter that leaves our home, a corresponding weight seems to lift from our spirit. From the physical, we can turn our attention to a more subtle and often more challenging area, the renunciation of draining relationships and interactions. Our life energy, our time and attention are our most precious and finite resources. Just as a wise gardener knows they must prune dead or diseased branches for the rest of the plant to thrive, we must learn to lovingly assess how we are spending our life force. Some relationships, even challenging ones, help us to grow, but others consistently drain us. These are the interactions based on chronic negativity, on endless complaint, on gossip, or on a fundamental lack of respect. Renunciation in this context does not necessarily mean a dramatic and painful severing of ties. It can be a much gentler act of setting healthy boundaries. It might mean choosing to spend less time with a person who reliably leaves you feeling exhausted and depleted. It might mean lovingly declining to participate in conversations that are rooted in blame or judgment. It is the wisdom of recognizing that you cannot be a source of light and warmth for others if your own energy is constantly being siphoned away. By letting go of these draining entanglements, you are not being selfish. You are preserving your own well-being so that you have more to offer in your healthier, more nourishing relationships. You are clearing space in your relational garden for new and beautiful connections to grow. This leads us to the deepest and most transformative form of renunciation, the letting go of our mental baggage. This is, by far, the heaviest luggage we carry. Our physical and relational clutter is often just an outward manifestation of the clutter we hold in our minds. First, consider the immense weight of our own opinions. We carry our opinions around like sacred artifacts, clinging to the need to be right. We expend enormous energy defending our viewpoints on politics, on art, on how others should live their lives. This creates a state of constant, low-grade warfare with the world. The renunciation of opinions is the cultivation of humility and open-mindedness. It is the willingness to listen, truly listen, to another's perspective without immediately formulating a rebuttal. It is the liberating realization that you do not need to have an opinion on everything. You can simply say, "I don't know," and rest in the freedom of not needing to be an expert. Next, we can learn to let go of our outdated beliefs, especially our limiting beliefs about ourselves. Throughout our lives, we have collected a host of beliefs, many of them formed in childhood. Beliefs like, "I'm not a creative person," "I'm not good with numbers," or "I'm not worthy of unconditional love." We carry these beliefs as if they are facts, allowing them to define the boundaries of our lives. Renunciation here is the courageous act of putting these old beliefs on trial, to ask, is this really true? Or is it just a story I've been telling myself for a long time? Letting go of a single limiting belief can open up vast new territories of possibility in our lives. And most profoundly, we can learn to let go of a rigid, fixed image of who we are. As we've explored, the self is not a static thing, but a fluid process. Yet we cling to a story, an identity. I am this kind of person. I am not that kind of person. This is an exhausting performance. To renounce this fixed self-image is to give ourselves permission to change, to evolve, to contradict ourselves, to be gloriously and unpredictably human. It is to let go of the need to be consistent and to instead embrace the freedom of being authentic in each changing moment. There is a classic story from the Buddha that perfectly illustrates the wisdom of skillful renunciation. A man is on a journey and comes to the bank of a wide and dangerous river. There is no bridge and no boat in sight. Being a resourceful person, he gathers fallen logs, branches, and vines, and painstakingly builds himself a simple raft. With great effort, he uses this raft to paddle across the treacherous water, finally arriving safely on the far shore. He has a long journey ahead of him, on dry land. The Buddha then asks his monks, what should this wise traveler do now with the raft? A foolish person, he explains, might think to themselves, this raft was so incredibly useful to me. It saved my life. I must not abandon it. And so, they would hoist the heavy, cumbersome raft onto their back and continue their journey, tormented and exhausted by its pointless weight. But a wise person, the Buddha says, would think differently. They would think, this raft has served its purpose beautifully. I am deeply grateful for it, but its usefulness for my journey is now over. And with a sense of gratitude, they would leave the raft behind on the riverbank and continue their land journey with lightness and freedom. The moral of this story is profound. Everything in our lives are possessions, our jobs, our relationships, our beliefs, and even our spiritual practice are rafts. They are tools that may be incredibly useful for crossing a particular river in our lives. But we must have the wisdom to recognize when we have reached the other shore. We must be willing to let go of things that once served us, lest they become our greatest burdens on the next phase of our journey. This wise and graceful act of letting go, of creating space in our homes, our schedules, our relationships, and our minds, is a powerful practice. But this newfound space, this lightness, can feel unfamiliar in a world that urges us to fill every second with noise and activity. To become truly comfortable in this freedom, we must learn to appreciate the very quality of that space itself. We must learn to value the quiet, the stillness, the sacred pause. This brings us to the deep and nourishing practice of embracing silence. In our journey together, we have learned the gentle art of renunciation, the wise practice of letting go of the unnecessary burdens that weigh down our hearts and minds. We have learned to travel with lighter luggage. This act of letting go, of simplifying, creates something that is both precious and, in our modern world, increasingly rare. It creates space, it creates emptiness, it creates silence. And for many of us, this silence can feel deeply uncomfortable. We live in a world that is profoundly allergic to silence. We have become conditioned to fill every spare moment with noise and distraction. We listen to podcasts during our commute, music at the gym, and have the television on in the background while we make dinner. When we have a spare minute waiting in line, we instinctively reach for our phones to scroll, to check, to consume. We have become terrified of the pause. We are running from silence, because in the silence, there is nowhere left to run from ourselves. In the silence, we are brought face to face with our own restless minds, our own unspoken anxieties, our own deepest questions. And so we keep the noise machine running, hoping to drown it all out. But the wisdom of this path teaches us a startling truth. The silence we are so afraid of is not empty. It is not a void. It is the very medicine we need. It is the sacred space where true healing, deep insight, and profound rest can finally occur. We must begin by cultivating silence in our outer world, by creating a sanctuary from the relentless barrage of external stimulation. We live in an environment of constant noise pollution, and this is not just a physical issue, but a spiritual one. The incessant flow of information, advertising, opinions, and alerts keeps our nervous systems in a constant state of low-grade agitation. It keeps us in a perpetual state of fight or flight, always slightly on edge, always processing, always reacting. To find peace, we must consciously choose to unplug from this machine. This can begin with small, intentional acts. You might choose to make your morning commute a silent one, simply watching the world go by without the input of radio or podcasts. You might take a walk in nature and leave your headphones at home, allowing your only soundtrack to be the wind, the birds, and your own footsteps. You might designate a specific chair in your home as a silent chair, where for 10 minutes a day, you simply sit, without a book, without a phone, without an agenda. This practice of cultivating outer silence is never more important than in the hours leading up to sleep. For many of us, the last thing we look at before closing our eyes is the bright, stimulating screen of a phone or a television. We are pouring a torrent of agitating information and blue light directly into our minds at the very moment we are asking it to become calm and quiet. A powerful practice is to create what is known as a digital sunset. This means that at least an hour before you intend to go to sleep, you turn off all screens, your phone, your computer, your television. You let the sun of the digital world set, allowing the natural twilight of your own consciousness to emerge. In this quiet hour, you can read a physical book, listen to calm music, take a warm bath, or simply sit quietly. You are creating an outer sanctuary of peace. You are sending a clear and compassionate message to your body and mind. The day is done. The time for striving is over. It is now safe to rest. By creating outer silence, you are laying down a welcome mat for inner silence to arise. This leads us to the heart of the matter, the discovery of inner silence. This is a crucial point that is often misunderstood. Inner silence is not about achieving a perfectly blank mind, a mind with no thoughts. To expect a thought-free mind is a recipe for frustration, for that is not the nature of the mind. The mind thinks, just as the clouds move across the sky. Inner silence, then, is not the absence of clouds. It is the discovery of the vast, open, and ever-present sky. It is the realization that your core awareness is this sky, which is fundamentally untroubled by the weather of your thoughts, no matter how stormy they may seem. Inner silence is the deep, still water at the bottom of the ocean, which remains calm even when the surface is churned into a frenzy of waves. Our practice is not about stopping the waves, but about learning to sink our attention beneath them, into the deep stillness that is already there. This inner silence, this spacious awareness, has been here all along. It is the silent witness that was present when you watched your breath, the quiet field of awareness in which the sensations of your body arose during the body scan. It is the background of stillness against which the traffic of your thoughts appears. We don't need to create it. We only need to discover it. And we do this by gently, repeatedly, shifting our attention from the content of our experience, the thoughts, the feelings, the soundstow, the context in which they are happening, which is our own silent, spacious awareness. Every time you notice you are lost in a thought, and you gently return to your anchor, you are, for a moment, tasting this inner silence. You are resting in the sky, not the cloud. And what happens in this sacred space of inner quiet? Why is it so valuable? When the constant, chattering noise of our ego, voice of our fears, our desires, our judgments, and our opinions begins to quiet down, we can finally begin to hear a much subtler, wiser, and more authentic voice. This is the voice of our intuition, our deepest wisdom. It is in the silence that creative insights often arise, seemingly out of nowhere. It is in the silence that the solutions to complex problems can emerge with a startling and simple clarity. It is in the quiet of the heart that we can truly feel the warmth of our own loving kindness and the tenderness of our own compassion. The noise of the inner critic fades away, and our innate goodness finally has a chance to be heard and felt. Silence is the fertile soil in which the seeds of wisdom, which we have been planting all along, can finally germinate and grow. The great truths of our existence are not just ideas to be understood with the intellect. They are realities to be realized in the deep, experiential stillness of a settled mind. There is a beautiful story that perfectly illustrates this entire process. Imagine a traveler who comes upon a lake. They wish to see their reflection in it, but the water is murky, filled with swirling mud and sediment. Frustrated, the traveler tries to clear the water. They wade in and try to scoop out the mud with their hands, but this only makes it worse. They take a large stick and stir the water vigorously, hoping to disperse the sediment, but this only turns the entire lake into an opaque, brown mess. Exhausted and defeated, the traveler gives up, comes back to the shore, and simply sits down under a tree. They do nothing. They simply allow the lake to be as it is, without any interference. And as they sit there in stillness, a natural process begins to unfold. The heavy particles of mud slowly, gently, begin to settle. The water gradually becomes clearer and clearer. And after some time of patient non-doing, The lake becomes perfectly still and transparent, beautifully reflecting the clear sky, the surrounding trees, and the traveler's own serene face. Our mind is this muddy lake. Our frantic efforts to fix it, to force it to be calm, only stir up more mud. The practice of silence is the wisdom of simply sitting on the bank, of letting our mind be, and allowing the churning sediment of our thoughts and emotions to naturally settle on their own. In this stillness, clarity arises. We have journeyed far, from understanding the restless mind to learning the art of letting go, from cultivating compassion for ourselves and others to now, embracing the profound value of silence. We have gathered a precious collection of tools and insights in our backpack. But these tools are only useful if we learn how to use them not just in formal practice, but to weave them into the very fabric of our daily lives. The final step of our journey is to see this not as a series of separate techniques, but as a holistic and integrated path to walk, a new and more graceful way of being in the world, in all of our waking hours and all of our sleeping ones. We have now traveled together on a long and winding path. We began in the dark of a sleepless night, face to face with the frantic energy of the restless mind. We journeyed through the foundational truths of our existence, seeing that life is marked by constant change, inherent unsatisfactoriness, and an elusive sense of self. We looked deeply into the mechanics of our own suffering, seeing how we create it by clinging to what we desire and pushing away what we fear. From that place of clear diagnosis, we turned toward the cure. We learned to cultivate the boundless heart of compassion, to forgive the past, to accept the present, and to find a universe of wealth in the simple act of gratitude. We learned to let go of our heavy baggage, to value the sacred space of silence, and to anchor ourselves in the steady, reliable rhythm of our own breath. We have gathered all of these precious tools and insights. The final chapter of our exploration is about how we learn to use them, how we weave these individual threads into the single beautiful tapestry of a mindful life. It is the art of not just knowing the path, but of living it. The first and most important shift in this integration is to redefine our understanding of the goal. Many of us begin a spiritual or contemplative practice with a hidden expectation that we will one day arrive at a final destination, a permanent state of blissful peace where problems no longer arise. This is a beautiful fantasy, but it is a fantasy nonetheless, and it is a setup for deep disappointment. The goal of this path is not to stop the ocean from producing waves. The waves of life will always come. There will be waves of sickness, of loss, of failure, of aging, of uncertainty. No amount of practice can build a wall high enough to keep out the ocean of reality. The purpose of this practice is to become a skillful surfer. The practice does not eliminate the power of the waves, but it gives us the balance, the flexibility, the core strength, and the profound wisdom to ride them. We learn to meet the rising swell of a challenge with presence rather than panic. We learn to navigate the crushing force of a loss with an open and compassionate heart. Peace, then, is not the absence of waves. Peace is the ability to rest in the spacious, unshakable awareness that is present and whole, even in the midst of the most turbulent sea. To walk this path for a lifetime requires two supreme virtues above all others: patience and kindness. This is not a quick fix or a 30-day challenge. It is a slow, organic, and lifelong process of cultivation. There will be days, or even weeks, when your practice feels easy and joyful. Your mind will feel clear, your heart open, and you will feel a deep sense of peace. Cherish these moments. And there will be days when your mind feels like a chaotic storm, when the old habits of anger, anxiety, and judgment return with a vengeance. These are not signs of failure. They are simply the weather of your mind. It is on these difficult days that your practice is most important, and it is on these days that patience and kindness are most needed. You must be patient with the slow, unseen work that is happening within you. And above all, you must be kind to yourself. When you forget to be mindful, when you get lost in thought, when you react with an old, unskillful habit, the practice is not to berate yourself. The practice, in that moment, is self-compassion. The practice is to notice, without judgment, and to gently, kindly begin again. That act of beginning again, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, with a heart full of forgiveness for your own humanity, is the path. This path is not meant to be confined to a meditation cushion or to the 20 minutes you set aside for formal practice. The ultimate goal is to dissolve the boundary between your practice and your life, to take this awareness off the cushion and carry it with you into every moment. This is the art of informal practice. You can begin to integrate mindfulness into the simplest activities of your day. When you eat, you can practice mindful eating. Instead of consuming your food distractedly while watching a screen, you can take a few moments to truly see it, to smell it, to taste it. You can eat slowly, feeling the sensations of chewing and swallowing, and cultivating a sense of gratitude for the nourishment that is sustaining your life. When you walk, you can practice mindful walking. Feel the sensation of your feet making contact with the ground. Notice the rhythm of your own movement, the feeling of the air on your skin, the sights and sounds of your environment. You can turn a simple walk to the mailbox into a deep and grounding meditation. You can practice mindful listening. When you are in conversation with another person, can you give them the full gift of your presence? Can you listen with your whole being, without simultaneously formulating your reply, without interrupting? This is a profound gift of kindness to others. You can even practice mindfulness with your daily chores. When you are washing the dishes, bring your full attention to the task. Feel the warmth of the water on your hands. See the glistening of the soap bubbles. Hear the sound of the plates clinking together. By bringing a meditative quality of attention to these ordinary activities, you transform them. The mundane becomes sacred. Your entire life becomes your practice, and every moment becomes an opportunity to wake up. There is a beautiful story about a farmer who plants the seed of a Chinese bamboo tree. He diligently waters and fertilizes the spot where he planted the seed, but for the entire first year, nothing happens. He continues his care through the second year, and still, not a single sprout appears above the ground. The third year, and the fourth year, the same. The ground remains barren. Many people would have given up, concluding that the seed was dead. But the farmer persists. Then, in the fifth year, a tiny sprout finally breaks through the soil, and in the space of just 6 short weeks, the bamboo shoots up to an astonishing 90 feet in height. The question is, did the bamboo tree grow in 6 weeks, or did it grow in 5 years? The answer, of course, is that it grew for 5 years. For 4 of those years, all of its growth was invisible, happening deep underground. It was building a vast, complex, and powerful root system, a foundation strong enough to support the magnificent and rapid growth that was to come. Our spiritual practice is exactly like this. There may be long periods where we feel like nothing is happening. These are the times we are building our roots. With every moment of mindfulness, with every act of kindness, with every choice to let go, we are strengthening the unseen foundation of our wisdom and compassion. We must trust this quiet, underground process and simply continue to water the seeds. And so we come full circle, back to the simple human longing that began our journey. the desire for a good night's sleep. By now, you may have realized that this entire path was never truly about trying to sleep. That was the presenting symptom, the first arrow that made us seek a new way. This journey has been about something far deeper. It has been about learning how to tend the garden of your mind, how to create an inner world that is characterized by balance, kindness, and peace. Sleep is no longer a problem to be solved or a goal to be conquered. It is simply the natural and effortless fruit that falls from a tree that has been well cared for. It is the gentle, welcome closing of the day for a mind that has learned, finally, that it is safe to let go, that it is safe to be still, and that it is safe to rest. We have come to the end of our long journey together. We began in the quiet desperation of a sleepless night, lost in the chaotic noise of a mind at war with itself. From that place of suffering, we set out on a path of inquiry, seeking not a simple remedy, but a deeper understanding. We walked together through the ancient landscapes of the heart and mind, guided by a wisdom that is as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. We learned to see our restless thoughts not as our identity, but as the chattering of an untrained monkey mind. We looked unflinchingly at the fundamental nature of our lives, seeing the universal truths of its inherent unsatisfactoriness, its constant, flowing impermanence, and the liberating mystery of its selfless, interconnected nature. We discovered that our suffering is not random, but is born from the way we cling to pleasure and push away pain, the way we grasp the handful of sand and hold the hot coal. We learned the profound lesson of the second arrow, realizing that so much of our deepest pain is a wound we inflict upon ourselves. And from that realization, we turned toward healing. We learned that our mind is a garden, and that we are the gardeners, capable of pulling the weeds of ill will and consciously planting the beautiful flowers of loving kindness, compassion, and joy. We found our anchor in the simple, steady rhythm of the breath, a safe harbor in any storm. We learned to sit on the riverbank and watch our thoughts pass by like leaves on the stream. We learned to meet the turbulent waves of our emotions, not with resistance, but with the gentle, courageous hospitality of inviting them in for tea. We practiced the art of putting down the heavy stones of the past through forgiveness, and we learned to stop our exhausting war with the present through acceptance. We discovered that our lives are already filled with countless diamonds of simple beauty, if we only train our eyes to see them. We learned that true freedom often comes not from adding more to our lives, but from wisely letting go. And we learned to value the sacred, healing power of silence. As we stand here now, at the end of this path, what is the essential truth we can carry with us into the nights and days ahead? It is this: peace is not a destination you arrive at. It is not a permanent state of bliss where all problems cease to exist. Peace is a way of being. It is a skill you cultivate. It is the inner strength and spaciousness that allows you to be with the noise of the world without being consumed by it. It is the stillness of the deep ocean that is untroubled by the waves on the surface. Happiness, we have learned, is not found in the frantic pursuit of what you do not have, but in the gentle appreciation of what is already here. And freedom is not about changing your external circumstances, but about fundamentally transforming your relationship to them. And so, we return to the quiet of the bedroom, to the very place where our journey began. But we return changed. We return with a new understanding, and with a toolbox full of gentle, compassionate, and powerful practices. The desire to sleep is no longer a battle to be won. It is an invitation to practice. If your mind is racing, you now have your anchor. You can return to your breath. If you are filled with self-judgment, You now have the medicine of self-compassion. You can place a hand on your heart and offer yourself kindness. If you are consumed by worries about tomorrow, you can practice letting them go, like leaves on the stream. You are no longer a helpless victim of your own mind. You are its gentle caretaker, its faithful friend. Sleep, then, is no longer the goal. It is the natural, effortless consequence. It is the gift that comes to a mind that has learned it is safe, that it is held, and that it is finally okay to rest. The path is now clear. The tools are in your hands. You have everything you need. You always have. So take a slow, gentle breath. Feel the simple, profound reality of this moment, and know that peace is not somewhere else. It is right here. Rest well.